in person.
Big gavel.
The gavel,
There you go.
the gavel.
Are you tied to that like Nancy is or something?
Wow, that is like, I didn't know I was doing that bad of a job. I've been trying hard.
Okay, my wife said I had to be good, I think, on that.
All right, we'll send Mr. Mason back there.
I'm not afraid of it. I know it's close.
All right, let's get our meeting started tonight, March 1st, 2022. We welcome our citizens with us. We also welcome the members of our Planning Commission joining us, and we appreciate all they do for the city. So we got a little training going tonight, so we're appreciative of those who have joined us here in person and those who have joined us online. Council member Severing will be joining us tonight via Zoom. He's down in St. George, so we appreciate him joining us. We'll start our meeting tonight with a thought, prayer, and pledge of allegiance, so whatever Council member Ekstrom so feels to do. So Council member Ekstrom, if you go ahead and get us started.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're so very grateful to be gathered together. We're so grateful for the opportunity that we have to meet and discuss the plans for the city. We are grateful for the opportunity that we have to live in this beautiful country and for our wonderful community and for her residents. Please help us to have thy spirit with us that we may be able to have that guidance and direction as we serve our community. Please bless us with health and strength. Please bless those who may be suffering at this time, and please help us to reach out and lift where we stand, whatever we can do to be of service to one another. Please help us to remember to use our strengths to serve and lift one another and to connect with each other through our weaknesses. Please bless us with guidance and direction and hope. And we ask these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Council member Ekstrom, and we appreciate Joyce joining us tonight. Susan is unavailable, and so thank you so much for joining us this evening. This might be the most exciting part of the meeting tonight, to have Cameron with us. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Presidential Scholarship, but Cameron has been nominated as a Presidential Scholar. And I didn't know what a big deal that was till I read all the qualifications and what it means. Let me just tell you a little bit about Cameron. First of all, Cameron, I thought superheroes always dressed in some type of unique outfit. So thanks for just being a superhero and coming dressed as normal tonight. But Cameron it's incredible. She plays lacrosse. She does cross country. She wrestles. Do you still wrestling?
Yeah, the season is done over.
Awesome. How'd you do?
Place 15 for the state.
All right. So that's cool. She is just a real go-getter and wants to make a difference in the world, which I think that those coming up in leadership, they have a big task ahead of them to make that difference. She's taken a lot of AP courses. I believe, if I read correctly, she's a 4.0 student, which is pretty envious for most of us here in the room. She's taken AP courses and wants to go into bioengineering, is that right? Medicine? Which I had to really figure out what that was, but it's pretty cool. It's something that will make a difference, I think, in the long-term health of our country. So very admirable things. She does a lot of volunteering with the American Red Cross, North Ogden Nature Center, I believe also. But but is the, I think Sterling Scholar, was it in debate?
Mhm.
So that's something within itself to be a Sterling Scholar, but she has been nominated as the candidate for the presidential scholarship. I don't know when that'll be finalized. Have you heard, Cameron?
I think they're sending out acceptances in April timeframe.
But you know, the great thing was, and I've been down to Santa Barbara. That's her preference to go to school down there, and it's a pretty awesome place for those of you who've been there. And it's a great campus. But not to worry, if that doesn't work out, we might have a great student up at Utah State University, I understand. So tonight, we just wanted to acknowledge Cameron's nomination as a presidential scholar. That doesn't happen real often in North Ogden and at Weber High School. So it's pretty unique. So Cameron, we have this little plaque if you'd like to come forward. I wanted to present this to you, and congratulations, and we wish you the best of luck. And so now we're ready for your 30-minute speech.
Okay,
You could probably
Cameron, what's your event in debate?
public forum.
Oh, fantastic.
Right now we're debating agriculture.
Griffin.
Slide out of the light so we
Yeah,
can. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, let's.
Huh?
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll now proceed in our agenda. We have the pleasure tonight of having Brent Bateman with us. Brent's been with us before, and he's going to provide some training on moderate income housing. That's a big subject right now in the legislature. Really ramping up, I guess, Senate Bill 34. They call it Senate Bill 34 plus.
Oh, wow.
They're really ramping that up. So as part of our obligation as planning commissioners and the city council, we need a little training. So I'm going to ask Brandon to introduce Brent, and then we'll proceed with our training. Brandon.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of council on the Planning Commission. I'm glad to be with you tonight. Brent is a prominent land use attorney here in the state. Currently, he practices with Denton, Durham, Jones, and Pinnaker. He's been there for, I think, a couple of years now. And prior to that, he served as the Utah State Property Rights Ombudsman, which essentially serves as a mediator in property rights disputes. When different neighboring landowners have a property rights dispute, they will take a case there, and it's a way for them to mediate a decision and an issue in a way that can hopefully keep them out of expensive litigation, but also that provides the unique expertise of attorneys who specialize in land use law. And so it's a really neat thing that the state has going. He served there for 12 years. I believe he was the second to serve in that capacity with his team. So I've asked Brent to present tonight on a presentation that I actually saw a few years ago. Part of it was called The Will of Democracy, and it kind of addresses how the decisions that we make here at the city level affect the state and influence the state legislature's perception of how cities are handling land use issues. And I know that's an issue that's come up several times in a number of decisions that we've made. There's concerns about the level of control that the state wants to exercise, things like that. So we thought it'd be an appropriate topic to discuss, as well as affordable housing insights thrown in there as well. So turn it over to Brent and let him share his material.
I was just thinking that I lost that, John.
So, hey, Brent, do you know Todd Leishman?
Yeah. Your friend?
He's an attorney.
Yeah. He's my friend.
He's a good guy. Will you tell him hello for me?
I will.
Did you know Dave? Did you know Dave Plum before Dave's departure?
No, I know who he is, but never really.
Well, tell Todd hi.
I will. Todd is president of my firm and takes good care of me. And
Good.
great man. I love him. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. And I really want to thank the Planning Commission for being here today, because this is a message that I hope that the Planning Commission and the City Council are united on. I really appreciate the opportunity and the invitation, Brandon. So I just want to say a couple things. First of all, I was the state property rights ombudsman for 13 years. During that time, I went around and did a lot of training in a lot of places. And I love doing it. This is one of my favorite things. And I really think that this is one of the best things you can do. And so last year, when the legislature passed that bill that said that, city councilors, planning commissioners have to have some training every year, I was delighted. And I'm also delighted to provide it, and I provide it for free. So anything I can do to help you is good. Now, since leaving the property rights ombudsman, which is a government office, if you don't know what it is, we can talk about that, but it was a government office meant to protect property rights, I turned to the dark side. Yes, I did. I am a developer's attorney. That's my third finger. But I want you to still trust me for a couple of reasons. First of all, because I'm a trustworthy guy. I am not the developer's attorney who goes around threatening and doing anything they can to get what they want. I hope that if I ever represent a developer in this town, I hope that you'll be happy, because you'll know that I'm going to come in and try to work with you and try to make the best possible result. The second reason I hope that you'll trust me is because I've known John Call for a long time, and if you trust him, you can trust me. If you don't trust John Call, I don't know who John Call is. And the third reason, and the most important reason, is I have three government clients, government entity clients. And one of those clients is North Ogden City. So this is attorney-client. So I have to tell you what is in your best interest, and I will. So just so you know, I'm here not as your attorney right now. I'm here just to provide training. So, all those caveats, but North Ogden City is and has been a client of mine. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you guys get the information you need. Now, having said all that, this is a great topic, and it's very timely. I don't know what kind of situation you guys have here. I don't know a lot of details about the kind of things that you're facing in North Ogden City. One thing I've learned through my years of doing this is that everybody's facing something different. At different towns and different areas of the state, which I have been all over from head to toe. Every town is facing different things, okay? You are not facing the same things that Moab is, or the same things that Vernal is, or the same things that Logan is. You're definitely not facing the same thing that Ogden is. This is North Ogden City. You have a government to run here, and you have people to deal with here, okay? So I say that for two reasons. First of all, I want you to think about what's happening in North Ogden City, and I want you to help me to make this mean something for you, okay? I could just sit up here and talk all day, and it's not going to do anybody any good, right? I'm going to try to make this interactive and entertaining, but what's really going to work is if you walk out thinking, okay, North Ogden City is going to be better after that discussion, okay? But the only way to do that is for you to tell me what's going on here and for you to let me know. So I want you to be thinking about that. Okay, especially when we get to the question and answer part, but feel free to interrupt me anytime. Okay, this is not a deal where I'm just going to talk and talk and talk, but think about what's happening in North Ogden City, because that's what I really want to know about. The second thing is that I want to make sure that I understand what needs you have going forward. So let me ask you this. Some of the parts of my discussion here, not all, but some of the parts is about affordable housing. Do we have an affordable housing problem in Ogden? In North Ogden, sorry. Do we have an affordable housing problem in North Ogden? tell me a little bit about it. I mean, what kind of situation are we like everywhere else in the state here where, you know, our kids are having a difficult time finding a place to live?
We surely do.
Yeah.
Apparently the state doesn't understand that we're 45,000 houses short now.
Mhm.
So they just keep incentivizing more people to come in, creating the supply demand issue.
Mhm.
And just pushing the price of homes higher and higher. And in North Ogden, you know, land is somewhat limited,
Mhm.
and it's a nice place to live. So the demand is pretty high here.
Well, that perfectly segues into my PowerPoint. And so I wanted to make sure that you can see this because I don't usually use PowerPoints this heavily, but it's hard to understand unless I go through the step by step. Yeah.
While you're on that point, I keep hearing those terms, affordable housing, but nobody's ever defined what they mean by affordable housing.
Yeah.
It's never defined, it's just the terms are thrown around. I never heard any numbers put to it.
Yep.
What is that number affordable?
Yep. Most of that information is undefinable. So I totally agree with you. And you know what? There are a lot of people that are sitting in a lot of meetings with the same question, trying to figure out what to do about it. And it's going on. That's not the only thing I want to talk about, though. I want to also talk about the legislature, okay? And what's going on there and how what happens here affects that. So anyway, here we go. This is it. This is the citizens hate that wheel, okay? Utah is great. Several times up today, we've already talked about how much we love Utah, and boy, do we. I mean, it is a beautiful place. How many places can you go up high in the mountains and fish in a lake, or go down into the desert and, you know, hike around the sandstone, or all those places are just right here. Utah is great, but the problem that we have in Utah is not working. Which button should I be clicking?
Yeah, it should be the one on the right edge.
That's the one. Because Utah is great, people want to live here, obviously, Mayor just talked about that. You know, during the pandemic, it was especially bad, and I have a sister who lives in California, and she's a member of the predominant religion in the state. And she told me that something like, during the pandemic, something like half of their ward moved to Utah. They just all left, you know. Utah, you know, it was hard to live in California during that time. There was so much lockdown. It was less so in Utah. You know, they all had family here, and it just wiped them out. So people do want to live here. I want to live here. I don't blame them for wanting to live here, right? And another problem we have in Utah is the Utahns make babies. Boy, do we. You know, I'm guilty of that myself. But all my kids now are grown. And I am right in the middle of this exact problem we're talking about. My kids, my grown kids, do not have anywhere to live. They cannot find a place to live that they can afford. So here we are. But anyway, the population is growing. That's the point. The population grows. Demand for housing outstrips supply, just like the mayor explained to us. And the result of that is prices go up. It's just simple economics, folks. Supply and demand. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. But there is a lot of demand. Okay, there's 45 to 50,000 families right now who need homes. We're short that much in the state. And I don't know of any place in the state that is immune to that. I mean, it's just going everywhere. But that leads us to housing crunch, which is what we are in now. If you will notice, there's an arrow from housing crunch pointing to the middle. Lots of arrows pointing to the middle. Well, this is what is in the middle. Citizens hate that. And this is where you come in, okay? You guys who are elected officials and you guys who are appointed officials, you know, what the citizens think and what they do, you know, that's your job. You know, I mean, you know, you want to get reelected, you want to get reappointed, you want to do anything, you want to be able to accomplish anything. The citizens are the situation here, and the citizens hate a housing crunch. I mean, everyone's complaining about the housing crunch, right? Everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, the problem that we have now is the housing crunch leads to developers build more and smaller houses. So I have clients who are very interested in helping with the housing crunch by building more. I have one client in particular who has about 10,000 approved units right now that he's just trying to build as fast as he possibly can. It's not in North Ogden, so don't worry about that. But the developers constantly want to build more. They want to build smaller. The problem with that is what? There's an arrow pointing. Where's that arrow pointing? Citizens hate that. I mean, have you heard this from people? A time or two? How many times have you heard in planning commission meeting in a public hearing, if you let this happen, children will die? I once went to a planning commission in a city not far from here, went to planning commission meeting, and 20 people were lined up at the microphone, and all 20 of them said exactly that. Said, children will die, you let this happen, and for different reasons, you know. Children will die because of the increased traffic, because my children like to play in the streets. Children will die because of the increased pollution. Children will die because someone will kill their pets and they'll be so sad they'll die, you know. I mean, and I don't mean to belittle citizens who really care, because they do care. They care enough to come and talk to us about it, right? But they hate that. They hate more, they hate smaller, they hate density. You know, in addition to being government officials, we're also citizens, right? So it's hard for us to look down on that, you know, but citizens hate that. Well, here's what happens next. You get more houses, you get smaller houses, you get people in the houses, the housing crunch eases up, right? Prices go down. Citizens hate that. Why? Because citizens love money, don't they? I would be happy if everybody else's housing value went down but mine. As long as mine doesn't go down 1 penny, I'm good. Everyone else can do it. And you know, you see all these polls and stuff all the time about, you know, they ask citizens, well, what do we need in this state? Well, we need more better housing. Well, yeah, you know, what kind of stuff? Well, we need affordable housing, and we need housing that people can afford and people can live in and it's beautiful and stuff like that. Great, great, great. Where? Next town. In the next town, not in our town. Because we don't want prices to go down, because we hate that. Now, if you'll notice so far, every single part of this has been a citizens hate that situation, okay? So when citizens hate something, local officials will try to stop it, okay? Because you have to answer to those citizens. They come to you and they say, you know, we don't want smaller homes, we don't want more dense homes, we don't want, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, it's a swear word. Density, don't ever say that. We don't want any of those kinds of things, okay? So local official try to stop it. So local officials try. It's not too long after that, local officials learn that they can't stop it. Why can't they? Because you're a legislature. That's one reason, right? The legislature is run by what?
Developers and real estate agents.
The legislature is run by developers and real estate agents, and do not fool yourself about that. It is absolutely true. The Speaker of the House, what does he do for a living? He's a developer. President of the Senate,
Developer.
he's a developer. There's a load of them up there, guys, a load of them. That is one of the reasons why local officials learn that they can. We call it death by 1,000 cuts. What happens is, and we're going to talk about this some more later, but what happens is that local officials make decisions that developers don't want, that developers don't like. So what do the developers do?
They lobby the state legislature.
Are you on the phone? And what happens then?
State preempts us.
The state preempts you. The state takes away your power, just a little bit at a time. The state takes it away. The state says, our local governments are not doing this right, so we're gonna tell them what they can and cannot do. It's, you know, one of my favorite sayings is from a former legislator who said, we in the legislature believe in local control until we have to control the locals. I love that one. That one's good. There's another reason though, that I want to talk about why local officials learn they really can't stop it. And that's just because people have property rights, right? People have rights, and we all believe in property rights. We all have property, we all believe in property rights, okay? The problem that we have is not so much people's property rights as it is people who think that their property rights are at the exclusion of everybody else's property rights, right? But people do actually have property rights. And so we have to, you know, we have to deal with that. We have to deal with the fact that they do. So it becomes difficult to stop it, okay? What you want, by the way, is you want to set the goal to not stop it. You want to set the goal to manage it. Manage it. You cannot stop growth. If someone could stop growth, if it was possible to stop growth, there would be a town out there somewhere, you know, Heber City, for example. If it was possible to stop growth, I can tell you that Heber City would have 500 citizens still. Because since day one, that has been their one and only goal. You can't do it. It can't be done. It can't be done. And you should never try to do that at the expense of trying to manage it and trying to be smart about it. So the next thing that happens, of course, is local officials start to allow growth. And so the next thing that happens after that is we get new local officials. Right? Because what does everybody who runs for office run on what platform? I'll stop it. You vote for me and I'll stop it. Every single one. And so that's a guaranteed way to get elected, by the way. You planning commissioners, you're wanting to get one of these seats up here, what you do. Say, I'll stop it. And you will get elected, okay? But of course, the problem with that is that it goes into a circle, which I call the wheel of democracy. We try to stop it, we can't stop it. We allow it, we get kicked out of office. And it just keeps going, in that cycle. What's the way, how do we get out of that? And that's not a rhetorical question. How do we get out of that cycle?
Well, first of all, you can't care if you're going to get reelected. If that's your motivation, is to get reelected, you shouldn't get reelected. So you just do the right thing based upon the knowledge you have, and you comply with the laws.
Remind me to move here and vote for you.
You won't have to worry about that.
There's a big difference, isn't there, between what is best for the citizens and what is best for the loud citizens? Is that always the same thing?
Nope.
There's a big difference between what is best for a citizen and the citizens as well. Sometimes, especially on the legislature, they forget that, especially when the a citizen has a lot of money. They will forget that. But the secret is, like I said, the secret is to be smart about growth. Be smart about it. And I'm going to tell you that the key to being smart about it right now. It's planning commission. It's planning commission. Okay. If your planning commission, you need to think about what your planning commission spends its time doing. And I can't say in North Ogden, I don't have enough information. But if your planning commission is spending more than half of its time doing anything except planning, I think that's a mistake. I think the planning commission should be spending more than half of its time on planning related duties. That means thinking about the city, thinking about what we want and where we want it. That means looking at the ordinances that are in place and thinking about those and thinking about whether or not those are working. Okay, and thinking about what kind of trends are happening in the state and what kind of things we're gonna have to worry about, you know. Planning commissions 10 years ago did not have to worry at all about Airbnbs. Right? And the smart cities, some smart cities anyway, got on top of that before it became a huge problem, okay? But some cities didn't, and especially a lot of ones that don't, that where Airbnb is a big deal, like Moab. They did not get on top of that, and it became a nightmare for them, right? Well, there's other things like that, and affordable housing is one of them, okay? Planning means that you are planning your town. Planning means that you are working on your ordinances, that you are proposing ordinances to the council. You are listening to the council tell you what kind of things that they'd like to see, and you're putting time into making sure that that works. Okay. It is not called the Conditional Use Permit Commission. It is not called the Administrative Decisions Commission. Is there anything wrong with doing those kinds of things? No. But there are ways to make it so that you're planning and you're staying ahead of these things. And that is how we get out of the wheel of democracy. Is we plan, we make sure that we're being smart about growth. We admit that we can't stop it, and we make sure we're being smart about it. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure that makes sense. What would you say about planning commission in North Ogden City? How much time are we spending planning?
We've improved that. We've,
Good.
you know, when I've been on the planning commission like 5 years maybe,
Uh-huh.
and we spend a lot of our time at first approving daycares and, right, like site plans and stuff that we're just like.
Yeah, like I'm saying.
Right, administrative stuff, and I think we've worked towards, I don't know if we're spending half our time. But we've improved considerably.
Great.
I'd say.
That's fantastic. When I first became the ombudsman, I did a lot of these kinds of trainings, and planning commissioners would literally say, I would say to planning commissioners, you guys, you know, you're spending all your time doing these permits, and that's not what you should be doing. And they would literally look at me and say, well, what's our job? What do we do then? I mean, they had no clue. And I think that's changing. And, you know, you have a good land use attorney. John is here to help and to sort of shepherd and stuff like that as your city attorney. But it's good, and you should keep trying to improve that. Yeah.
So just a food for thought for the group, where I think we could improve is, I feel like, and don't get me wrong, I love city staff, like, and I think they're great, okay? But it seems like most of the things that we think about, talk about, are driven by staff that come to us, and then we hash them up. I don't think we spend a lot of time coming up with our own things.
Yeah.
For agenda items.
Yeah.
Right, like I have a couple pet things that I want to see,
Mhm.
and I just don't know actually how to throw them on the agenda and have those things happen. So that's maybe the one place I think we could.
You said a mouthful. That kind of thing is so important. That kind of thing is so important. You know, it's being proactive instead of reactive, right? Because there's always going to be developers who are going to come in here and ask to do something. You know, whether it's a one home or one little barn or something, or a big multi-unit thing, you know, condos or anything, you know. And that happens, and you think, that's the wrong place for that. And you look in your code, and there's nothing to prohibit it. And so what can you do, right? And so you can prohibit it now, but one guy gets to go in there, right? That's reactive. Being proactive is, you get the map up, you know, and you say, so over here, you know, I think we've got this plan, maybe this plan needs to be adjusted a little bit, you know, because you know what, we thought that this was going to be a major road, and so it'd be a great place for commercial, but it's all surrounded by this low density development, and so, you know, maybe commercial near that is not the best thing, and so, you know, maybe this road can shift, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know. Now, it's impossible to predict everything that a developer is going to bring. It's impossible to do everything that you need to do, okay? But you need to start eating the elephant. You need to start, you know, with just those kinds of ideas, you know. It's great to just look at a few key ordinances and say, does this ordinance work? You know, is this the direction we want to go? I see the state code here says such and such about whatever conditional use permits, okay? Our code says something completely different. You know, how can we reconcile those? What's gonna happen when somebody asks for a conditional use permit? You know, it's a constant ongoing thing. You should never think your ordinances are done. You should never think your plan is done. It should be a constant ongoing thing. And the best cities do that. I don't think anybody does it perfectly. Some places do it better than others, but it's a good thing to try. Yeah.
So, this might seem like a general question, I'll try to make it specific. So we're, like many places, experiencing a lot of growth.
Yeah.
One thing that we have, an asset that we have is we have some large swaths of land. As you come in on 2700, the way you drove here, you can kind of see, we've got this swath of land. Some of it carries through into Pleasant View City. Is it best to just focus on where that hard stop is and just focus on North Ogden? Or, you know, do you have suggestions about, because it is a collective piece of land that it's, I mean, it's obvious to anybody who looks at it, like good planning would involve some cooperation there, but is that just like an uphill battle? Just focus on your boundaries.
That's a great question. So I think good planning is time-based. What do we want in 1 year? What do we want in 5 years? What do we want in 10 years? Right? And I don't think you can do that effectively without having a good expansion plan, without having a good annexation plan. And there's no harm in putting certain areas that you would like to see in the 20, 25-year future as part of your town in your annexation policy plan. You put it in there and it's not doing anything. It's just in 10 years, that'll be available if it's the right time, you know? And you just have that plan ready to go so that you can respond and react to that as you go. Now, you mentioned Pleasant View City. I will just be frank with you and tell you that I have a boundary commission hearing tomorrow involving Pleasant View City. But the folks on the other side, not on this side of Pleasant View City, and there's some chunks of land that both Pleasant View and Clinton want. And so we're going to the boundary commission tomorrow to find out who gets it, right? But that, you're gonna be on the wrong side of that. Were you giving me some legal advice there?
No, I'm using geographical advice.
Oh.
Yeah, Clinton's yeah,
Maybe Clinton, maybe Pleasant View and Far West.
yeah, some of them. So,
Yeah, you're probably right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a very long. Everyone's looking at me like, what? Okay. It's not Pleasant. It's not Pleasant. I was wrong about the Pleasant. It's not Plain City. It's the other one. It's on the west. It's on the west side. It's on the east side of Plain. What's on the east side? No. Oh, it doesn't matter. Okay. Anyway, the point is, you don't want to be on the losing side of that. I should find out before the hearing tomorrow, shouldn't I? I should figure out what. You don't want to be on the losing side of that. And so you want to plan. And it also goes for roads, right? You have, you know, in the future, you're going to need some roads, right? You're going to need maybe expand 2700, you know, because it's going to get busier and busier, you know. And what's your plan for that? You know, there's plenty to work on. And honestly, if it were me, this is how I would start. I would start saying just exactly what Brandon suggested, is let's just have a time where let's throw out some ideas. Let's talk about some things that are on our minds. You know, what's in our little district or what citizens have said to me, you know, and everything. Start there. In addition to which, I would just go through the code. I would look at some sections of the code and just read them and say to yourself, does that make sense to me? Is there any way I can just tweak the wording, one word, a couple of sentences to make that better, more robust? And steal like you're the thief in the night from every other town around here. Do not think that you need to reinvent the wheel. It is okay to steal ordinances from each other.
So back to my comment, I believe we do have those opportunities. You know, obviously there's a part on our agenda that's, you know, remarks from planning commission members. I just don't really see those things being, and we throw some things out, I just don't know if they're super actionable in the planning commission, really. Right, like, we don't take action, and we throw out, there should be just, whatever, a parking ordinance change or something. I just don't,
If there's one thing I've learned, and this is just a little piece of advice, and I hope this isn't oversimplifying the concern you're expressing, but if there's one thing I've learned after years and years of working in the legislature, is going up there and telling the legislature there's a problem does nothing. Going up there with draft language does something. Because that gives everyone something concrete to look at. So, hey, I was looking at this, and I think it would be great to add the sentence, only people who wear purple pants can live in this particular development.
that's
And that gives you something to talk about.
because really we talk in generalities in that.
Yes.
That's very true.
So anyway, that's my hope for you all. Okay, let's move on to another subject. So we have got the real democracy is causing a problem. So as we said, the developer is not happy. So the developer calls up his friend in the legislature. And those guys are happy to step in. They're happy to solve your wheel of democracy problem. And they will do it about anything. I mean, I have seen them step in and pass laws about beekeeping because some dude wanted bees and some city said no. And so they went up there and they passed a law saying you cannot say no to beekeeping. And that's all there is to it, right? And now and they'll do that with everything. Death by 1,000 cuts, like I said. That's what they'll do, okay? That's my next little takeaway here is try not to be a story. Try not to be a story because it's stories that the legislature latches onto, okay? I don't think I know of any situation where North Ogden City has had that problem, I'm glad to say. There are other cities that do. There are other cities that all you gotta do is go to the legislature and say blah, blah is the name of the city and everyone's going, but try not to be a story. So the state steps in and pressing the button. Just click it for me, John. I'm doing wrong here.
It's there.
There it is. So the state steps in and the cities try to comply with the state, and of course, citizens hate that. Right? The citizens think that you are caving. The citizens think that you're not doing your job. So when the citizens hate what you're doing, they do a referenda. Have we had any referendas here? I can tell you that what a referenda is, by the way, just so we're defining terms. So the referenda is a time when the citizens do not like what the local officials tried to do, and so they put it on the ballot, right? They go out and they collect signatures and they get it on the ballot.
We had that.
That's fun, huh? When that happens.
Public Works building, guys, like we've had this.
Yeah.
Isn't that one of your favorite things? I can tell you that of all the things that I get calls about, I'd say referenda is probably the second most common thing I get called about. Mostly from citizens who want to pass a referenda. I mean, it's everywhere. Everywhere. You can almost not make a decision without somebody getting together and trying to do a referenda. Now, referendas are hard to do, but they're doable and it's a pain. And but they're going on all over the place. And so people are out there collecting signatures. And of course, the signature collecting process is a joke because people go out there and they hire a bunch of college students. I lost it, John. They hire a bunch of college students and the college students go out there and knock on doors and they say something like, do you want to have a say in what happens in your town? Of course I do. Well, then sign right here. And they don't really talk about it. They don't really give any details of what's going on, you know. That's a generalization. You know, some places, some people do it, you know, right, but that happens far too often. And so you end up with a referenda, which means that you get large homes on large lots because that is the one thing that citizens do not hate. And that's what I have. I mean, it's not a large home, but I got a nice lot. And all of my friends want that. And I'm sure that all of you want that, and that's what my daughter wants, and everyone wants a large home on a large lot, but as the mayor pointed out to you, the land is going to run out for that. And it's not just that. It's not just that. Large homes on large lots is one of the major causes for pollution. It's the car culture that we have. I mean, anything against cars. But you gotta drive farther to get to the store. You gotta drive farther to get to your office, you know? And of course, citizens, the same citizens who wanted large homes on large lots, hate it when the land runs out and then the water runs out and it becomes more expensive to provide services, right? The garbage truck has to drive farther, right? And so their taxes go up. And all of these kinds of things happen. They hate that. But that's what they ask for. And then we get to the next one. And pretty soon there's no more housing. And then it's not just a simple arrow to Utah's great, it's a lightning bolt. Because is Utah still great? Once that has happened, but it just starts again. It just starts again. So let's talk about the legislature for a second. About what's going on. Of course, all of this is just my little take and it's an attempt to be cute about this and everything. But this is, and it's a horrible oversimplification, okay? I do not believe that building more homes and smaller homes is the key to the housing crunch. I don't think that's the answer. I don't believe that everyone is unhappy unless they have large lots, okay? This is definitely generalization, but this really is how the pattern works in my observation, okay? And more importantly, this is what the legislature thinks is happening, okay? And so the legislature right now has a problem with affordable housing. I mean, we're in the middle of this cycle right now. And there's one more little click, see if I can get it. You are here. That's where you are right now. The state steps in, okay? If it's in my years of working with the legislature, which has been a long time, there's always been something that they've been concerned about. And that they feel like the local officials are not handling right and wanting to step in. Now it is 100% head to foot affordable housing, okay? And the definition of affordable housing, like you said, it's unreachable. Does affordable housing mean housing for our busboys and our people who clean hotel rooms? Or does it mean housing for our teachers and our police officers, and our small business owners? Or does it mean housing for the city attorney? John, do you live in a big house?
2,400 square feet.
Okay.
On a big
Now,
lot.
see what I mean about John?
But he's got a large lot.
The point is that they're very concerned about it. They cannot circle in on the solution and they cannot circle in on the definition and they cannot figure it out. So what do? They blame somebody. Who do they blame?
Local officials.
Local government. They blame local government. Now, let me ask you guys as local government, who do you blame? Developers. Why do you blame the developers? No, I understand that. Why do you blame developers?
Because it isn't our fault.
They're the ones put it in the applications. So
They're the ones putting in the
I'm
application.
not
So,
saying it is their fault. I'm saying that's who we're going to blame.
yeah,
Right?
no,
That's the
I totally right.
applications that are coming in.
Because that's the question I asked you.
Yeah.
They're the ones putting in applications. So what kind of applications are they putting in? Are they putting in applications for apartment buildings,
Sometimes.
Sometimes,
townhomes,
sometimes.
sometimes? How's that going down? How's that working out?
The residents hate it.
And so they come to the meeting and they,
Say we're ruining North Ogden.
so you guys blame the developers. The developers who would love to provide affordable housing blame who?
The market.
The public. Now, is it the public's fault?
But Brett, how many developers really want to provide affordable housing?
So
I
here's.
mean,
the
you
thing
look
about
at the profit that developers are making today,
Mhm.
sincerely, are they really interested in providing affordable house? I don't want to put an umbrella over things.
Yeah.
But really, you know, the more units you can put on a piece of property, the more money you can make, right?
Not necessarily, but
Generally, I mean, in a general term.
I want to answer your question this way, okay? The developers have one goal, and that is to make money.
Yeah, well, nothing wrong with that.
No, that's America, right? That's my goal. You know, to make money, right? What is the quickest, easiest way for a developer to make money? To build what people will buy. Right? So there are times when people only want large lots and large houses, and you better believe the developers are gonna come and ask you for large lots and large houses. This is not that time. Right now, people are buying townhomes and condos and stuff like that, like they are going out of style, and developers know that. So it's not a question of how much money you can make per unit, it's a question of how many units you can sell today. And so that's, you know, that's what's on the developer's mind right now. And so the developers are thinking, you know, where is the market right now? The market is with anybody from a young married couple to a librarian, you know, people who are not making a ton of money, but they're important parts of our society. That's where the market is. Those people are willing to pay. And so they're building. Now, some developers, I will be the first one to tell you that some developers are creeps. And some developers they'll just do anything to make a buck. That's unfortunate. Some developers, though, there are plenty of them out there who are serious about wanting to build a good community, who want a good product. They figure a good item in a good area will sell better. I mean, it's still all about money, right? But they want to be that. They want to build a community with people. I'm totally happy if you want to tell the developers who are creeps to shove off. But you know, another takeaway from this is, you know, cities don't build cities. Cities don't build roads. Cities don't build, you know, sewer systems and everything. Developers build that stuff, right? And that's one of the reasons why you can't. That's another reason why you can't stop growth. By the way, you stop growth and your town dies. It dies. You get a good developer. You'll work with them. You know, that person is a good person. That person is cooperative, and has the same goal as you. You know, you find a goal that aligns, and that is, I want a nice city. I want a good product in a good place. I want smart growth, and I want this to be beautiful and positive. And there are developers out there who will do that with you. We'll work on that with you. Those are the kind of developers that I try to get from my own clients personally. So, yeah.
So embedded in your comment there, is there legislation that says you have to treat all developers fairly? I mean, if they're a creep, can you make it more difficult for them? Or on the flip side, if there are developers who live in your community and you get a sense of they want to make our community better, you know, is that against the law?
That is a fantastic question, and I'm going to answer it this way. The great Dave Church, does any of you know him, Dave Church? He's a great guy and he's a good friend of mine. He used to have a saying that really impacted me. What he used to say is, you, and I mean you, like government officials, you are the reason why the Bill of Rights exists. The Bill of Rights exists to protect citizens from you. Right? And what that means is, okay, is that when we establish a government, what we're doing is we're giving people power over us. I mean, think about it. There's no other way to look at it. When we have a government, we're giving people power over us. So like, for example, okay, I want to start a tire fire in my backyard, okay? I can't. Why? Because the government tells me that I can't. And I have to do what the government says. The government has power to stop my tire fire, okay? And it goes a lot more subtle than that, okay? And these guys up here on this dais, and you guys are I don't want to use the complicit, but you're part of this process. These guys up here have the ability to make laws. They have the ability to make a law that we have to obey. In other words, they get to tell us what to do. That's power. We have given them that power willingly. We voted for them. We elected them and we put them up here, okay? Why? Because we want an ordered society, right? We want peace. We want things to be clean, right? All these things that these guys work so hard to try to achieve, but it's power, okay? So power needs control. You know, that old phrase, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, that has happened in local government. I mean, there's been local government officials who have just been corrupted by power, just gone nuts. So we have controls, okay? And the controls generally start the Bill of Rights. That's what the Bill of Rights is. It's controls over the power of the government to tell us what to do. But, you know, it goes deeper than that. But one of the things that you have as a local government, you do have to do is you have to be fair. You have to be fair. You have to be fair to the jerks that come in. And the guy who sits in planning commission meeting and gets up and yells and screams at you and then has to be dragged out by somebody, you know, or the person who goes up to the front desk and calls that person at the front desk a total, you know, blippity blip and all that kind of stuff, you know. That person, no matter how big a jerk they are, has property rights. And as a government, you know, you need to respect that. You need to respect those property rights. Now, one thing you asked me is you asked me if you could make it more difficult. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. And I will leave it at that. But yes, you do have to treat people fairly. You do have to, I mean, you absolutely do not have to. Say you have two chunks of property right next door to each other. And two guys came in and asked for zone change. Okay. I want high density residential and I want high density residential. And you honestly look at that and say, high density residential works here, high density residential doesn't work here. And so you say yes to that zone change and you say no to that zone change. That is 100% fine. You absolutely can do that. You can do that. You can do that right down to one person's little field, you know. Spot zoning is perfectly legal. Okay. What you cannot do is I have high density residential and I have high density residential, and they both come in with applications for apartment buildings, and you cannot look at that and say, I don't like your apartment building, so no, I do like yours, so yes. That's a subtle difference, right? But you're treating them fairly within the law. You have the power to change the zone or not. Right? But once somebody comes and asks for something that's absolutely legal for them to do, that's when their property rights kick in. And no matter what kind of jerk they are, you have to respect that.
Can I throw in a comment?
Please.
So this ties back into Brent's comments about from David Church. I think the quote that I recall from him is that you are the government entity that the Bill of Rights warns us about. And so a lot of times if someone gets up in a public meeting, I think something to always take into consideration is whenever we're discussing property rights, property rights is not something that is an easy case to, you know, try and provide a nuanced discussion on. As soon as someone says, well, this is a matter of property rights, it can easily become a red meat sort of issue. But I think a helpful question in your minds is to ask yourself, whose property rights are we thinking about? Because a lot of times when decisions are made that end up either not lasting or being unfair, it's because only one party's property rights are being considered as opposed to two or more property rights. And so I think that, you know, sometimes people use the phrase that one person's rights ends where another begins. And I think that that's a relatively healthy way to think about this issue when it comes to property rights specifically, because every time we make a decision that affects one person's property rights, there's often an effect on someone else's. And so it's a matter of trying to find a win-win that balances and meets the property rights of both. And oftentimes those people are not all of the parties are in the room. And so in order to make an effective decision, we need to be thinking about people who aren't in the room, both in terms of space, like the neighbors may not be in the room, but also in terms of time, like future residents that whose interests should be looked out for as well.
That's great, Brandon, that's great. As a matter of fact, it reminds me of a little pop quiz I used to do, so I'm just gonna ask a couple of the questions in that pop quiz, okay? The code says that I can build a 30-foot shed in my backyard. Do I have the right to do that? Is that a property right? The code says I can build a 30-foot shed in my backyard. Is that a property right? Absolutely. Absolutely. You can create rules about that shed. You can create, rules about its setbacks. You can create rules about, how it's oriented and stuff like that. But if the code says I can build that in my backyard, I can, okay? The code says that my neighbor can build a 30-foot shed in my backyard, and that 30-foot shed is gonna block the sun from my garden. Do I have a right to stop that? You don't, because what do you have property rights for? Your property. You have property rights for your neighbor's property. You do have some, but they're limited. Okay. If it's going to block the sun from your life forever, there's some exceptions to that, but generally no. And so that's the thing, okay? You'll hear a lot of people say, well, the developer's property rights, fine, but what about my property rights? Your property right to what? Your property right to not have heavier traffic? Do you have a property right to that? Do you have a property right to have your kids playing in the middle of a public street? Is that your property right? No. It isn't. Okay. There is only one way that we're allowed to tell other people what they can and cannot do on their land. It's only one way. We're not allowed to have a vote about it. We're not allowed to go, pressure them or anything. There's only one way to tell other people what they can and cannot do on their land. And that is make ordinances. When you make an ordinance about what people can and cannot do, people have to follow that, but that is the only way. We cannot do it any other way. There's no way around that. So let's see. We've hit the wheel of democracy. We've hit the legislature. Oh, so I wanted to just sort of wrap up with this, and we're just about out of time. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. But I just wanted to say this, okay? Right now, there is a major bill up at the legislature. It's 90 pages long, and it was introduced like 4 days ago. The legislative session ends Thursday. All right, it ends in like 2 days. And 4 days ago, a 90-page bill was introduced called Affordable Housing, Utah Housing Affordability Amendments. And it's going to pass. It's going to go through, even at as long it is, and even at the length that it is. Okay, and it is. The mayor mentioned this to me. It is SB 30. What was it?
34 plus.
SB 34 plus. You remember SB 34? It said you have to have an affordability plan, right? This is taking that and it's expanding it. Okay, it was substituted to this afternoon. I have not seen it since it was substituted. So I don't know what it says, and it probably will change again, but it's going to pass. So keep your eye on that, because this is the exact example of what we're talking about. The citizens complain to the local government. The local government doesn't do all this thing. All these points of blame, which again, I don't really think are all that legitimate, but all these points of blame have caused the legislature to step in, and they're doing this again. And so we're going to have to just deal with it. When it happens, we're going to have to deal with it. So anyway, keep your eye on that. Does anyone have any questions about anything that's going on in town that I can provide a quick insight for.
Got a question. So my, this is my own personal pet peeve is affordable housing. Not once have I heard a developer come in and say, we're gonna build this project and it's gonna be cheap.
Yeah.
They always, and we have one here, you build quality projects. And you're like, these are gonna be nice luxury quality projects. That doesn't mean affordable.
Yeah.
So how does that all work?
So that is actually a great question. That, I said, I think all this pointing and blaming and everything is not helpful. That, what you're addressing right now is the real problem. It's the real problem, okay? So, like I said, developers are gonna go with what sells and they're gonna sell them for what sells. The creepy developers, what they will do is they will say to somebody, I will build you this house for X, okay? And since the house doesn't get built for 6 months, X is now worth 100,000 more, right? And they will back out of that contract to get that 100,000 more. Those are the creepy ones, okay? The good developers, and there are several, like I said, what they are doing right now to try to manage this, they are still selling it for what it'll sell for, okay? But they are requiring, well, let me put it this way. When they're getting it appraised and they are not letting people buy it unless they're willing to pay the appraised price and are willing to live in it for a year, rather than just flip it. That's happening, okay? But it's still like way out of control. The problem that you have, and this is what some people have done to solve this, the problem you have is flippers, okay? I can build a house for $100,000 and I could sell it for $100,000, and what that person is gonna die, the person who bought it, what is he gonna do?
Sell it for 200?
He's gonna sell it for 500, the way things going, right? Right? There are some places, and this is mostly something that's happening in like resorty places, where they are requiring, they're requiring the developer to make covenants that before the person buys, that they actually have a job in town. They're actually working in town with a job. That job has to be below a certain income level, right? And there is a deed restriction saying that controlling the price increases as you go. That's the best solution people have come up with so far to do that. But the market is what it is. I mean, people want to sell and people want to make money. And if I had somebody who was building $100,000 condos, I'd go buy them all, right? And then I'd sell them.
So Brent, there's a lot of discussion about giving additional density if there's rent subsidies. For instance, build 100 units. If you build 110 and make 10 units affordable, so to speak. But then what happens is the rent, there's a bottom line the developer has to make, right? As you said, they're in there for money. It's got to pencil out. So what happens is the other 100 residents end up, it's what I call a hidden tax.
Yeah, because they paid full price and other people got a break.
Well, they're paying a little bit more than full price for rent, right? Because the bottom line has to hit. But I'd just like to say as we wrap up, I'm proud of our planning commission. I think they do a great job. I'm proud of our city council. We talk about smart growth.
Great.
We talk about trying to find, Brandon's brought to us numerous times, different types of housing. Not everybody wants the same thing. The problem that I've always thought in my mind is difficult for a city is how do you keep up with infrastructure?
Yeah.
You talked about the hard infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
But the city is left figuring out how to plow those additional streets.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I feel right now is with the difficulty of getting police officers, how do you stay ahead of that? How do you keep the citizens safe? Because you can't find police officers generally. I mean, we've been pretty successful. We've got a great chief. But that's the thing I've always struggled with is how do we stay ahead infrastructure wise? Because once you fall behind, it's incredibly difficult to catch up. And so that's the kind of the struggle, but we talk a lot about mixed housing uses. Councilman Swanson got mad at me one time because I said, look, we don't have an obligation to enrich landowners. You know, we'll help and we'll look at it and be reasonable, but there's no obligation. People know what their property is zoned, right? It's been that way, or they either bought it that way.
Another way to put that is you do not have a right to a particular zoning, including the one you have today. But you definitely don't have a right to the zone change or
Yeah.
an upzone.
But I think, you know, I just want to say I'm proud of our council. They're open-minded. Planning Commission does a great job. And I think, you know, we've used the term smart growth. I'm not sure we've defined it as much as we'd like to, but but thank you so much. I don't know if there's any other questions.
I'll just add one thing to what you said. The problems that you're talking about there, you know, the soft costs and stuff like that. If you can figure out the solution to that, you will get your face carved on Mount Rushmore. Because that is the problem in every city and every town in the world. And there are professors who are working on that, trying to figure that out. It is not fair. It is not a fair system. I mean, and you know, we want to keep taxes down, but we want to increase services. We have to increase services. It is not fair. It is not a fair system. All you can do is just keep the struggle going.
And you know, that's one of the things I really struggle with today is inflation in homes, and you have elderly people who property taxes literally can price them out of living in their own home.
Yep.
This inflation in home prices and trying to manage that with keeping the city healthy and not pricing people out of their own homes is really a dilemma.
Well, we could always stop having babies. That's one option.
John, that'd be you. I'm looking around the rest of us. I'm not sure that's a problem. Well, JD, it might be for you.
We keep talking about affordable housing, that, but I've read articles after article after article, and cities across this nation looking for open land for parks, but health and well-being of their communities. And yet, you know, to put in parks takes revenue, takes money, tax money, to maintain those parks, take tax money, that, yet if you keep putting houses on it, those kids do end up in the streets. Because we have no place to go play.
Yeah, Scott, I think you're
So we have
your
a real
point.
problem. Where do you get money to pay for those who want to police everything else?
But I think to Brent's point, good developers recognize that today. That as you put more people together, look, good people have sometimes difficulty getting along, right? And so, Scott, your point is very well taken, is that they need to have a place where they can go unwind. Else we're gonna have mental health issues like we've never faced before. So I'm also proud of our council and planning commission because they recognize that and they're looking at what the solution is as we, you know, have this mixed housing in our city, so.
Sometimes it feels like banging your head against the wall. I guess the takeaway is keep banging. Keep at it. Keep
Some
finding
people will
the
say
side-
I
keep
bang
trying to
mine
find
too hard.
solutions.
Councilman Swanson, did you have
I
a?
was just in the last few weeks thinking about, you know, affordable housing. I looked at the birth rate. National is about 1.7, right? What's Utah's birth rate in 2019?
I don't think it's that much higher than that.
It isn't, it's only 2.3. So our current birth rate is barely above the net. It isn't the big families that we used to have. I think what we're seeing right now is that rat being swallowed, you know, bigger families that are now getting, all the kids are getting to the age where they want the housing. Mayor, you talked about incentivizing, bringing more people to the state. You know, that economic summit that we went to, the state has 120,000 open jobs right now with nobody to fill them. And so, you know, we have people, I mean, just to fill the jobs we have to have 120,000 people move in on top of the 46,000 that we don't already have.
Exactly
Just
right.
to comment on that birth rate though, that doesn't seem like a big deal, that small number, but population growth is logarithmic.
Sure.
Right, it's exponential. And so that the impact of future generations is greatly impacted by a small number, like the difference between 2.3 and 1.7.
Sure.
Whatever that is. Right, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it is as time passes.
Yes.
And it's going the same way as you know, I'm involved sometimes with Intermountain Healthcare. The birth rate in this state, the number of births is going, going this way. But I also read for the first time, the influx of people in migration was greater than organic growth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good thing.
And that's what's happening is people are coming here because it's a great place to live. And they're selling a home, a 1,500 square foot home for 1.5 million.
That's right,
And coming here and buying one for 800,000 or 900,000
with cash.
with cash. And so it's just inching up pricing, but these are all solvable issues. We just need to put our minds to
I
it.
think it's cyclical too. I think sooner or later, things will even out and swing the other way. But we have to figure something out. We have to keep trying. And, as a city, you try to find ways to provide workforce housing for your teachers and police officers and stuff like that. You keep trying to provide that kind of stuff and hopefully it will work out.
So what were you doing in 1982, Brown?
I was a freshman in high school.
Freshman in high school. I was working in mortgage banking,
Oh, yeah.
taking homes back, people just sending in their keys because prices dropped 50%.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I remember things like that. I remember when in the late 80s, there was a crash. And of course, there was the crash in 2011. I don't know that I would say that there's going to be a crash so much as a correction. But I also don't think that this is the kind of thing we can say, well, it'll just repair itself.
It won't.
Yeah, no, we have to do something.
Any other questions for Brett? Comments? Public?
Thank you,
Brett,
everybody.
anything else? Great presentation.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you. Tell Mr. Leishman.
I will.
You can tell him that Mayor Berube said, say hi to Fleischman.
Fleischman? Okay.
He'll know what I mean.
Real quick, we just have a gift card to say
Oh.
thanks for Brett for
Appreciate that.
showing up and giving that great training.
Thank you. Did I get everything? in?
Yeah.
Great job, Brent. Thank you. Be safe driving home.
My pleasure, guys.
The chief of police is here, Brent, so you don't have to worry about getting a ticket. He's here.
Got me covered.
Got you covered.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on in our agenda. And planning commissioners, you're welcome to stay or you may depart at your leisure. If you'd like to depart now, we'll give you a few minutes. I mean, I can't imagine you don't want to, stick around with all this excitement.
My son has done it since,
You're right. There you go, Cody. You can be good on the council, finding somebody else. Thank you for your attendance tonight.
Scott said his therapist said he couldn't stay longer.
Yeah, I understand. All right, let's move on with our agenda. Council, you've had a chance to look at the items in the packet this evening. Do you have anything in regards to disclosure of a potential conflict of interest? John, is council member Severing responding to?
He does not have anything.
Perfect. All right, we'll now move on to item number 4. We have our January 11th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. Hopefully you've had a chance to review. Anyone find any corrections that we need to make? Don't see any. Our recorder does a great job. Thank you. So council, I'll be looking for a motion to approve those minutes. So moved by council member Ekstrom,
I second that, Mayor.
second by council member Severing. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to public comments. Item number 5 on our agenda. John, if you would watch to see if anyone who's with us electronically has any comments. At this point in time, if anyone in the audience would like to approach the microphone, if you would state your name, if you're a resident of North Ogden, and if you would limit your comments to 5 minutes, now would be the time to step up. John, is there anyone online?
No one with a raised hand.
All right, we will move on then. Scott Hess is not with us tonight, so John will be making the presentation on item number 6, which I think fits right in with our training this evening. This will be a discussion on the Shaw Century Farms, which is located at approximately 281 East Loman View Drive. So John, if you would, John Call, if you would go ahead and lead the discussion. We do have the applicant here. This is simply a discussion, introduction of the concept and some things we have talked about. So John, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So Council, this on your screen. Sorry, I need to share it on Zoom so people can see it. Is the Shaw Century Farms. It is a proposed development with smaller lots, closer to kind of an R5 zone, but also it does include some larger lots. The council, as they've been considering this, had talked about putting a park in this development as part of the rezone. And I believe, based on my remembering the conversations, that was essentially a requirement for the rezone to be considered, was a park to be constructed. So this discussion, I think, is centered around what that park looks like, what's the council's expectation, so that as this goes back to the planning commission with the development agreement and the rezone, that it's clear what the expectation is. Scott would probably have done that more eloquently, but I'm all you got tonight. So this is the proposed from the developer, which is John Hanson and his team, is that they would be giving the city about 10,000 square feet of land and $100,000 in cash. And that would be used towards the construction of the park, but the city would do the actual construction. And then, let's see, Scott put together a staff report that was in your packet that included, I believe, a map. Or sorry, just a table of an estimate for what Parks and Recreation would prefer, or what they would design if they were putting this park together. So the cost for is laid out, that the emphasis is on this essentially being a destination park that's reachable through the trail system, with the trail on the canal connecting right through there. And there being an emphasis on picnic tables that are covered. So they have a little gazebo above each table. Well, maybe not a gazebo, but a shelter from the sun. And then also some emphasis on the piping the well that's currently on the Shaw property and making a water feature on the property. And then the biggest expense is cost for landscaping and the playground. The original estimate that we got from the developer was about $185,000 for their expenses if they were to install the park on the ground that the council was reviewing. And this is a recommendation based off of our best estimates for what it would cost to put in the type of park that we would want. What is being proposed with the cash donation, there is a potential upside to that. Obviously, there's a difference in what it would cost and what we would want. The idea is that we would actually be able to qualify for a ramp grant fairly easily with a 30% donation for this amount of money. That being said, I should probably make it clear that I think that the amount discussed at the council previous meeting was $185,000, not as a cash, but as the construction contribution. And so I don't want to gloss over that factor, make it seem like staff is recommending something different, because staff is neutral and letting the council hash it out with the developer, although generally we do encourage you to take as much money from developers as you can.
Hey, John, just a question on the cost for landscaping.
Mhm.
If I understood that right, the part the developer would do, that's in addition to the 100,000, is that correct?
So this is the total cost for the whole area. We do have Tiffany online, and she helped together that, so she might have a better answer for
My
us.
question is the cost for landscaping, the $149,658.37. Does that include the portion that developers saying they would landscape?
So it does include that. And what is being proposed by the developers, they would not do any construction. They would just give us the cash, and this would be the amount it would take to do the entire property that's in purple here. The parcel A is the developer's ground, and then the pink is the city's ground.
Where did I read that the developer was going to landscape and sprinkle their part? Did I misinterpret that, John Hanson?
I think that was my intention was, and maybe I didn't state it right, is I was gonna pay to landscape parcel A,
Right.
plus donate the land to the city, plus $100,000.
That's what I thought.
And so we could look at it where I could put the 100,000 up plus whatever it would cost me to landscape it, if that helps your ramp fund. And that may be up to 150,000 then. If that helps the city,
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I understood what you were.
that's what you and I had discussed.
John, call, scroll down, there's a sheet that we have that says proposed, it's spelled out there, keep going,
Can you look over here?
keep going.
I'm on page 3 of 3.
There's another sheet on ours that Scott sent.
Is that
Oh,
this
yeah,
one?
there you go, yep. So see, it says parcel to be fully landscaped with a pressurized sprinkling system installed, parcel turned over to be finalized.
So this is why Scott's not allowed to be sick.
Yeah.
In addition, yeah, that's what we had discussed. I would, can I speak?
Yeah, this is just a planning.
I would
I'm pretty
prefer
casual.
to have the city, me donate, whether that's 100 or 140, 50, whatever it is, and have the city do it all, because you know what you want. I mean, that would be my suggestion.
So that is different than I understood it. So going back to that map, everything in parcel A is what the developer was talking about. They would landscape and then would be giving the city $100,000 to landscape everything east of that.
So in that estimate that Tiffany put together, is that the whole thing or is that just our portion?
So probably better to have Tiffany answer that question. So just,
Let's see, I found the mute button. So if you wouldn't mind, John, could we go back to that budget that was shown? And what I have on here, I'll also be missing Scott because I worked with him as I put this together. And it came out of a concern that I often have when engineers take a look at the cost for development of a park, especially when it comes to playground structures. They are always much more expensive than engineers price them out to be. And so when I went together and put this together, I'm not a landscape architect and I'm not a developer. So that 149,000 was presented to me as cost of development. And I'm not sure if it was parcel A and the city's parcel or the other, but I've put that cost in here. And then I've also included the other costs that I feel like may have not been included with a development number. So a playground, a more realistic number for a turnkey playground is $81,000. And then there are some pretty significant expenses for the amount of trees, bushes, mulch, and other landscape features that we would like to see included, as well as benches, seating, and picnic tables with coverings. They're often just a lot more expensive than people anticipate. And so that's why I've given these numbers here. The gray box that's below is a price that I don't have that's for concrete. In our parks, we like to have walkways and ways for people to get to the different amenities. And without laying it out and having it calculated, I can't tell you the cost of the concrete that would run through the park, but I anticipate that a park of this kind of scope that the city could put in would cost closer to 350 to 500,000 in that range, depending on how everything got laid out. And so the idea that I talked to Scott about as we put this together was I said, well, we can take what the developer is putting towards this, and if it's considered a donation to the city, it can help us in our application for ramp grants. And so we can take that either as cash or as cash value, I guess. So whether the developer puts in the sprinkler system on their own or whether they provide the cash in order to do it, it counts the same on ramp side. You know, the value of the land in dollars or the land itself counts the same to ramp as a partial match towards this grant. So assuming, just for even numbers, assuming total project cost was $500,000 and we wanted ramp to pay half of that, $250,000, we would put in that application. And then of that $250,000, the city would pay whatever portion was not covered by the developer, if that makes sense. So if we're shooting for a $500,000 park, we go halfway and we need to match at least that much. So $250,000 would be matched by the combination of city and developer funds. But instead of just having city and developer funds, we now get to double that value and put in a park that has the amenities that we're looking for. So
And I guess that would be, Tiffany, some risk is, would the grant be approved? I think there's a high probability, but we're not guaranteed.
That's
the grant would be. I think the other thing the council needs to address is, you know, I think this is an ideal park. You know, if we had 500,000, we do it, right? But I think the council needs to decide, you know, what kind of park this is. I appreciate Tiffany looking at the kind of ideal park. You know, this is kind of somewhat of a new venture for us, right? It's a pocket park. And its primary purpose is to be used by the development, people in the development, so that they have a place to go unwind and get away. So I think that's another issue that the council needs to decide is, you know, if you say it's $350,000 park, what does that do?
Mayor.
Yes, Tiffany.
I think the point that you bring up is well taken, in that there is a possibility that we don't get a ramp grant. Ramp is also up for re-election in 2024. So there's always a possibility there as well that it doesn't get voted for, or gets voted down and the program disappears. I would hope that that would never happen, but it would mean that if we were going to apply for a ramp grant, we would want to definitely push that up on our timeline. The reason that we propose the parks that we would like to see, the ideal parks, are because our goal is to put in what we would eventually like to see. And it always costs us more to do that later on down the road.
And I'm not as familiar with things as you are, Tiffany. You know, this almost looks like, and I think we allocated, wasn't it 80,000 for McGriff Park to get the playground in there? It's probably gone up since then, but anyway, I just think that's something the council has to decide, is what type of risk and park, you know, would fit in this. Because one of the other things, I'm sure we'd want a fence down next to the Public Works situation, which, you know, I guess there's a couple 100 feet of fence we could buy. Is that right?
I know where
Mr.
you can
Hanson?
buy some.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So anyway, we do have, John, do you have any additional information?
Nope.
Mr. Hanson, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I kind of felt dirty after Mr. Baker talked, you know. But he did say maybe there's one or two that worry about the city, but I'm excited about this project, and I hope it will be affordable. And what does that mean now? If I made the kind of money that he talked about, I wouldn't be sitting here. I can tell you that.
Then what are you doing sitting here?
Don't make that. But I just want to make it nice.
Right, and I think your developments,
When I walk away from that, I want to say, I did that, and that's beautiful for the city.
well, I think this is a new type of housing that we haven't had in the city before. The proposal, I think this fits into our kind of mixed housing options to give people options. I was impressed with what I saw as we went out in Layton City and out in West Haven. If it's done right, it's very attractive. I think this is surely something the planning commission might look at there, but council, what questions do you have for Mr. Hanson or?
Just maybe the timing, maybe John could help us. You know, about how long you think it would take to go through the zoning subject to this park and everything. Is there, John, do you have an idea?
So if I remember right, this rezone request was tabled by the council or postponed.
Correct.
It was till the end of the legislature to see
And
What-
so
what happened.
technically there, we have gone through the public hearings. And so it would just be probably putting together the language for what the council expects and getting that approved by the council.
So the development will probably get done before the park because we wouldn't be applying for, the ramp grants wouldn't be granted till about a year from now. I think they just got granted. And then you're probably talking about 6 months to a year for development. So the park probably wouldn't be there for 2 years.
But your money would be there for me. I would donate the money.
Right,
So that's in the account.
the 250,000, that's right.
Yeah.
And that would be, I think the county funds it, so it would be available in July. Is that correct, Tiffany? Or is it the next fiscal year, county fiscal year, which would be?
That is correct. It could be available as soon as the county commission approves it, which is even before the next fiscal year.
Okay. Councilman Swanson, you,
Yeah, I have
Yeah,
a question
question.
and then a comment. For Tiffany. Tiffany, in the ramp grant application, we would have the $250,000 cash donation from. You didn't laugh when I said it.
I don't think he heard you.
No, the 150, 140, 150 in cash. And then can we also, as part of the match, include the land value?
Yes, so ramp will value either a cash donation or labor or the value of the land. So one option is if you wanted to see at least grass and infrastructure and a developer were willing to put that in, you could use the value of the land, the value of the construction and the grass and all of that labor that was put into it as part of your match.
So at a minimum, a 10,000 square foot lot is worth what, 100, 120, depending on where you
Fully developed.
fully developed. But this would not be a fully developed lot.
It'd be close to your 250. I haven't put the land, I'm giving that land, but if she says that helps you.
Right, so
The
between
land
your
is
cash and the
also.
land, it would be 250, which is half of the 500.
Well, and we're making a contribution of land, right?
That's right, which adds to the value of the match. I say we swing for the fences and we apply for the ramp grant, but be prepared to do a minimalistic park. If we don't get the ramp grant and all we have is the land from the city, the $350,000 from Mr. Hanson. And we start with where we can. I think if I were purchasing a home in that neighborhood, even a little over an acre that was grassed in, sprinkled, would be better than nothing. And is a place to start. And maybe apply for more ramp granting down the road to put more of the amenities in. But I think with the value, cash and land from us, because our land value is going to be closer, that zone commercial. So the donation value should be a little bit higher.
Yeah, it's all dependent on how much out-of-pocket cash, right, the city wants to put in.
Right.
And I agree that, there's no problem shooting for the moon. Then we deal with what we get and understand that the reason we're doing this is for the benefit of this development, so people have a place to go and get away from things. Johnny, were you going to also pipe the the spring down there. Did I understand that?
Tiff and I talked about it. I think it would be a nice feature
But you were gonna do that, right?
of the park. At this point, it doesn't matter.
260,000 now.
It ought to be a part of the park, but we can talk about it.
Yeah. So,
I was gonna say
Mr.
Tiffany has
Call?
another comment.
okay, let's hear from Tiffany.
I just wanted to let the council know, my biggest concern with taking cash instead of having the park actually developed is the same concerns that happened with Barker Park. I don't want for this property to be accepted, for the cash to be accepted, and then for things to sit. Because the longer it takes, the less of a chance that we'll actually get this completed. So, you know, concerns about ramp aside, I think there's an opportunity to leverage those ramp funds, but I am concerned that, you know, the park that we would like to see go in will get kicked down the road for other projects or other priorities.
Well, Tiffany, I think you've got a great point there, but I think we can fix that. I would say that we incentivize the council to act upon this opportunity by saying, if the park is not done within X period of time, we return the money to the developer.
That sounds great.
I like that.
Because I think there's a real purpose other than just having a park here. This is, I think, a concern we've shown for our citizens and the folks that are going to live in this area. So I think you've got a council that will act on keeping our commitments. So does that help you, Tiffany? Because I think you've got a great point there.
Yes, I think that's great.
Okay.
30 years, right?
Well, we're at 22 or 23 now, so.
Tiffany's shooting me, right? Sorry, Tiffany.
So I think this needs to be done as quickly as possible for the benefit of those in the development.
How lenient are you? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, this is a work session, so I'm pretty lenient as long as you're nice to us.
Well, I think I usually am.
You are.
Where does the old city shop fit in this map? Is this part, I think I'm afraid
Right.
I missed the first meeting on
Yeah.
this. ago.
It's right next to it, right along the border.
Okay, so.
That's
so
what we would
you're doing
fence.
Nothing with the old city shop.
We might have to move an outbuilding a little bit, but at this point in time, this would not cause us to do.
And so that's where you're gonna put a really good fence that the kids are not gonna be able to get into the old city shop.
That's,
stuff.
I'm not sure there's a fence today that can stop kids from doing whatever they want, but we'll make a
I
good,
know, I have.
There is, if you want one, there is.
no electricity,
It's a little bit money, but
no electricity
just a lot of
involved.
Constantine wire.
But this is right next, runs right. That's why I said the fence would have to be there to do that.
Those pole barns at
Thank
the
you.
north end, the storage sheds
Mhm.
are right here. And this line comes down and then the building that's right here is it's just right here. And this is the well house. You can see the well house that's there. That's this rectangle that's right here.
And that'd have to be incorporated into the park with some type
A
of
part of the park.
part of the park. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for asking it. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
I'll be
sir.
nice, I won't mention your gavel.
That's okay. I like it.
I have a couple of questions. Why would we let the park be the last thing? The last couple of months, we've been through this prominent point thing and the clubhouse and all this stuff they're supposed to make and the fight over it. Why don't we say, put it in first and be done with it? We know it's there, we don't have to wait on it.
Well,
I think we should try to get all the grant money that we can and then put it in. And I look at this park and I say the developer has to pay for the roads, the water, the piping. Why doesn't that fall under his responsibility too?
to do what? Put the whole park in?
Yeah. You know, we help him with all the grant money we can, but he's responsible for the final bill. I mean, you said it's kind of like he has to have this park to build this. You said that at the beginning.
Well, yeah, I think we talked about,
And he's giving us 400,000.
well, two things. One is, frankly, I think delaying this development to put the park in first would actually be detrimental to the people that might want to live there. Prices of construction and housing are going pretty significantly.
They are, and if he has to do the park, he's just gonna add the money to the price of the house, and that's not affordable anymore. You know?
Well,
It's a double-edged sword too.
But to get the ramp money, we need to give to the city.
Yeah.
well, there's two aspects here. Is, how do you do this? Do you leverage the amount of money you can get? Because once again, as was talked about by Brent, the developer has a bottom line they've got to hit, right?
Yeah, they do.
So if I say to Mr. Hanson, well, this is a $600,000 park, and we're only going to rezone this, if you come up with $600,000, the development most likely wouldn't take place, right?
I can see that, yeah.
And frankly, this is a new direction I think the council is taking, is to say, we're in this for a win-win situation. I've always felt that if you get in a win-lose situation, so if we cause, and Mr. Hanson will tell you, I'm not an easy guy when it comes to, I dot my I's and cross my T's, and I went through a time where a lot of development took place, and all of a sudden, the developer had the money and the financer had the experience. Initially started out with the developer, having the experience, and the financial institution having the money, and it got reversed. So I think we just have to look at a win-win situation here. And I think that's what we're trying to do in this new direction that the council's taking is, hey, we need these type of things to make the city a great place to live, to continue. So this is our first shot at it, but we could surely say, if the council so desired, is Mr. Hanson, we need you to put in a $600,000 park there. And he's going to get up and he's going to walk out, and then we don't have an opportunity for somewhat of affordable housing, and we don't have an opportunity to leverage that. My concern is of getting the park in first is we substantially delay an opportunity for people to have what might be a reasonably priced opportunity to live in our city.
I like what Tiffany said about having a time limit, like you said. We have a time limit, and if we don't do it in that amount of time, the money goes back.
Yeah.
So we're not sitting for 20 years like that.
Well, I've only been the mayor for a couple of years, but I've learned what the heart is of most of the people on this council. And I believe that, when they have an intention to do something, that they will do it. But to assure that, I'm saying if it's, exclusive of if we run into some problems here and it can't be done, and it takes a little bit longer. But I'm not adverse to putting some time requirements on getting this done. Councilmember Swanson?
If we applied next year for the grant and it were awarded, it would be 2024, July-ish, unless the commission were to, grant it right after it was approved. I think we set a 2024 deadline that it has to be begun and underway or the money goes back.
I think, Mr. Hanson, we could maybe hybrid this if we say, okay, we want you to grass and sprinkler parcel A. It gives us a good start, right?
Right.
And it gives at least some place. And then we, to your point, gives us a chance to determine if we have a park in the stars or a park in the moon, or, where we end up. So, there's a lot of options here, but
right.
I guess I would just like to go around and find out. Councilmember Barker, what are your thoughts?
I like the proposal. We can figure out logistics later, but I think this is a great idea. It's the first time we're doing this with the developer, so let's go for it.
Okay. Councilmember Dalpaz, do you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I like the idea. The one thing that comes to my mind is I think we want to be careful that we don't have a miscommunication on the expectations of what the park is. So as we learn, if the ramp grant is accepted and we get it, great, that would be awesome, and that'd be the perfect situation. But I think what we want to be mindful of is that we might have it be the lesser park than what it could be someday. So when, John Hanson is marketing to the potential buyers, we need to make sure that it's very clear that the expectation is a minimalist park and that it could be better depending on things falling into place.
Okay, because the city is taking some risk of completing the remainder there. So Councilmember Severing, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Mayor. I was just going to say that I just want to express appreciation to John Hanson and his organization for being willing to make this kind of contribution and bless this little subdivision like they are. I don't have anything really to add beyond what Ryan or JD said. So just want to express appreciation for John Hanson. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Swanson.
The only additional comment I have is that, as you mentioned, Mayor, this is an experiment, right? We're hopefully heading in a new grand direction with these pocket parks. And we're doing it with a developer that really does have a good history of making North Ogden a great place and building quality products. So I think it's a win-win group that hopefully will have a win-win situation. I like it.
Okay. Councilmember Ekstrom, do you have anything to add?
I think the minute that went up, I loved it. I think I'm like, oh, I like this. And so the more we talk about it, the more I like it. I guess my question is, looking at that parcel of land, it kind of slopes. So when you put all this in, are you going to make sure that that park is kind of graded and kind of all set to be?
Oh, yeah.
So that's going to be part of just your development of the whole property.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's been waiting, Councilmember Ekstrom, for us to give some direction in regards to what the city's piece looks like and what the expectation is so that they can pursue.
And that was the point of
pursue.
tonight, was to be
Right.
able to get some direction from you so that we could move forward with the rezone in favor of what you guys would like.
I know Mr. Hanson has suggested we have a sledding place there and call it Hanson Hill. That's what I
As long as you
heard.
take the liability. It's all yours.
Well, we do on any park we've got. Okay, so council, what I'm hearing here is that this is something we would like to proceed along with. We could give direction to Mr. Call to work with the Hanson organization to come up with an acceptable agreement. And that if we can come up with the agreement that's acceptable, then we would bring this back from postponement and see if the development is approved. And we can go that direction. Is that what I'm hearing? I think we are we're canceling the 8th. So I think we'll ask John what time frame he thinks he can put together an agreement that the council could approve. Because I think we want that approved before we proceed along with approving the development. John, Call, what's your time frame?
So I don't see why we couldn't get it on an agenda this month. I just need to verify with Scott that we don't also require a text amendment to our zoning code to accomplish this.
I think we probably do. This is a little bit different zoning than we've. A little bit.
We will do a text amendment. He had me fill out an application.
Okay.
To start that process, so we could do them probably simultaneously.
Yeah.
Like, together.
Well, so John, let's have the agreement ready for next council meeting. Work
Okay.
that out with the Hanson organization. And if we can get the text amendment on the agenda, we'll proceed at that point. Is there anything further you'd like to add? Geneva or Mr. Hanson?
Thanks for orchestrating this, Mayor.
We appreciate your $260,000 donation.
$300,000 donation too.
Yeah. That's why he's leaving before the number gets bigger.
I'm gonna read the minutes too.
Yeah. All right, council, thank you very much for that discussion. I think this is a new frontier the city's engaging in, and hopefully this can be a win-win situation. Councilmember Dowpaz, I think from previous discussion, you would like to address how we respond to residents in regards to communication. So
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And this stemmed from a conversation that Mayor and I had one-off a while ago. So as I've been in the city council for a couple of months, I'm quickly realizing that a big part of my role is I'm essentially acting as a customer service rep to our residents. It is a big deal for me that residents email us, they have questions, they have concerns, and we want to be able to set a level of service that is above and beyond, let's compare ourselves to maybe what another city would have done. I know that our city council, we're all part-timers in a sense, but I do think that we should come up with kind of a level of expectation. So some of the ideas that I had is, when we are receiving an email from a resident, do we have a goal of responding to that resident within 24 hours? Do we have a goal of that being 48 hours? So that's one thing I want to kind of spur some discussion on. The other thing is, we are all a liaison to one specific department or a couple of specific departments as a city councilor. So I think it would be reasonable, and by the way, I'm new at this, so I don't have a lot of history. I don't know what the city council has done in the past 2 years, in the past 4 years, in the past 6 years. So I'm very open and all ears to everyone's feedback. But I would say that it would make a lot of sense that in general, if you're the liaison to planning or building and a resident emails us a subject of such, that you be the one that's responsible to respond to that. So I just wanted to get some thoughts from everyone on what you think about that. And then just general ideas that when we are responding to a resident, and it will be beneficial for everyone to see that response, copy the whole group so we don't have any communication swirl where Charlotte could have known something that was going on, but didn't, just because she simply wasn't included on an email. And then another big part is I want to make sure that we reduce as much confusion internally with city staff as possible. So let's talk about some ways that we can make sure that we aren't overwhelming John Call and our city recorder and all of our different department heads, because we have 5 different city councilors that have different ways of doing things. And, maybe we overwhelm them because we have a lot of people reaching out to them and wanting their time. So I'll leave it at that, and hopefully we open it up for a little bit of discussion.
thank you, Councilmember Dalpas. I think it's all of our goal to respond quickly to our citizens. I think you've hit something on the head that needs to be addressed, and that is, how do we get some consistency in our response to citizens? I think there's really another issue here, and Councilmember Swanson brought it up. And in working closely with Mr. Call, I've always believed that it's very difficult to have 6 bosses. And Councilman Swanson brought this up, as how does communication take place with the city manager? And how do we not jerk the department heads, around? I think those are broader issues that need to be incorporated into our discussion. Is how do we do that? How do we communicate amongst each other? And how do we keep our city manager somewhat sane? Because I've discovered, it took me a couple of years to do this, but if the mayor asks a question, that's a demand and it's done in 24 minutes, just asking a question. And so I think we owe it to our department heads and to our city manager to have a flow of information. I think we all feel an obligation to respond to a citizen when they send a message to the city council. I don't know what their expectations are. We have some citizens here maybe that could help us. But I'm open for discussion. So let's start with you, Councilmember Swanson. I'm not sure we'll solve this tonight, but maybe some issues that we need to get out on the table.
What I've tried to do, and I go through lapses where I don't do it as well. You get, I think there's caution to be considered in limiting which council member responds to any given email, because we all represent everybody in the city. And I think it would be a disservice to the residents to say, well, you have a public works issue, so only the liaison over public works can answer your email. That being said, as council members, our primary and really only role are ordinances and finances. I'm not an expert in water. I mean, I've been here 8 years. I'm not an expert in water, in solid waste, in storm sewer. I'm not an expert in any of those things. There were a couple of emails that came in today, and one in particular about Little Miss Cherry Days. I know the discussion that we've had over the last 8 years. I understand why we don't have it at the moment. But I felt that the answer most appropriately came from Tiffany. And so you'll see that if you've seen the email already, I replied to all and added Tiffany to the carbon copy and asked Tiffany to respond to that. In my mind, that's how the responses ought to come. If there's a planning question, we respond to the resident that, yes, we've got it. Appreciate the question. Frankly, I don't know the answer, but I know somebody who does, and we include them in that response and ask them. They'll do a reply to all as they have in the past. Resident gets the answer that they're looking for. We're educated as council, but the experts that will remain as we cycle in and out of our seats are the primary, for me, I think should be the primary source of the responses for most of those kinds of questions. For those, obviously there are more philosophical questions that will be council, and maybe we have to have a discussion about how do we respond to that, where a resident doesn't get 6 different answers. One slightly different from every council member and then the mayor, right? I don't know the answer to that, but I think most of the questions we get right from the department head. Can pass it off to somebody else, but for me, send it to the department head and let them respond their expertise.
I think that's where the best answer comes from. I'm just wondering, for instance, in the example you gave, if Councilmember Barker is checking his emails and we all agree that we should follow that up with the respective department head, I think we have an obligation to make sure there was a response. So the department head should probably do that. But in that case, would it be to save the department head? Because I can tell you when Councilmember Swanson or Councilmember Ekstrom or the mayor responds to an email, the department head feels a real obligation to try to satisfy all 6. So in this instance, Councilmember Barker checks his email every day, responds within 24 hours, and he sends the response and copies Tiffany, because that's his liaison responsibility. I don't want to make this too technical, but you'll respond, I'll respond, Councilmember Ekstrom will respond, and the poor department head's going, well, the mayor's response was a little bit different, and Councilmember Swanson. So is that something we could consider? Not probably solving tonight, but.
What I try to do is I don't try to give an answer. Like with the Little Miss Cherry Days today, I just simply said, Tiffany is the one that can answer this question. And in the cases like if Charlotte, Councilmember Ekstrom, or any of the other council members have already answered, and there were several today, I don't respond at the bottom so that everybody who's now been included in that email chain gets it. I go right to the very first message that came from the citizen to the CCMM, right, the council and mayor, and I respond to that one just to the resident. Thank you for sending, thank you for raising this. I see that Councilman Dalpaz has already sent this off to Tiffany. I'm sure you'll get a great answer. For me, that's in my brain, that's the easiest way.
I guess my question is, who on the council is responsible to make sure that there was a response and a timely response to the citizen.
I would say whoever initiated the initial response.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering, if the initial response shouldn't come from the respective liaison person. That requires each council member to be on top of their emails every day, not.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm still familiarizing myself with what's in public works. So I'm like, this one in public works.
But, you
So
know,
I'll try that.
we're just having an open discussion here, green lighting some ideas. Councilmember Ekstrom, do you have anything you'd like to, are you done? I'm sorry, Councilmember.
No, yeah, no, I'm fine.
Yeah, I like that idea. And a lot of times it's like, I'll see it and, a lot of times I'm out and about and just reading email and I don't have time to respond, but but when I'm going back at the end of the day, I'll make sure somebody responded. You don't want to leave a resident thinking like, I sent this email, nobody cares, they're not going to talk to me. You don't want that feeling, but I don't know if they need to hear from all of us, like, it's a little overwhelming.
Well,
So,
yeah.
but I do like your idea of what's the nature of the question? Is it an administrative thing? And then, Mayor, I think you're the best one to answer those. And then if it's concerning, one of the departments, then the liaison for that department kind of takes priority. I don't mind somebody nudging me and say, hey, did you respond to this one? But, I have noticed that you're really good just to say, touch base, you know what I mean? You make sure that they know they've been heard.
Yeah, I
And
think
I
that's
do
the important
appreciate
thing.
that. Yeah. Because I'm not the quickest to respond.
Okay,
So.
we can help you with that.
Okay.
I think there's a courtesy piece as well, though, that is owed from each council member. The resident who emailed 5 council members and the mayor.
Mhm.
And I think that each of us owes that resident at least a courtesy response that says, thank you for your email. And then if we decide that the most efficient way or the appropriate way is that the liaison then takes it from there, that's great. And we can all wait until the liaison, we see in the group email that the liaison has responded. And then each of us can also then give that courtesy response to say, thank you.
Yeah, they're
for
expecting,
emailing. We're grateful for your involvement.
They email the whole council, CCMM, right?
Right.
And so in this example you gave, it would be similar. Councilmember Barker, who is working with Tiffany Staley, will make sure you get appropriate response.
Right.
And then Councilmember Barker takes it from there and makes sure that we follow up, because I think having that information come from Councilmember Barker to Tiffany kind of takes this situation away of, well, I wonder what Councilmember Swanson's expecting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So, Councilmember Barker, this is, we're using an example, so
Well,
I know you love responding to emails.
so, yeah. And I kind of have a different philosophical view than Councilman Swanson. If I see this email that comes to all of this and 4 council members and the mayor have already responded saying, thanks for your email, I never respond. So sorry, people that email, I don't respond because I kind of think it feels just everyone's going through the same motion and everyone's just saying, thanks for your email. And so, so if I'm wrong and you want me to start responding, I'll start responding saying, thanks for your email, but I'm of the opinion, like you said, if somebody's already pushed it on, why do I need to say thank you? It's already been taken care of and they're getting the response that they need.
And in this particular instance, we would expect the response to come from you to the citizen and the follow through.
But on the other side, I don't have my city council email on my cell phone for personal reasons. So I check my email in the morning and at night.
That's adequate.
By the time at night, it's already been taken care of. So then that's another reason I don't respond, because it's already been taken care of. And some of us are more diligent with their email than others.
Well,
and I'm not one of the diligent ones.
Well, checking it twice a day is pretty diligent, if you ask me.
But I'm willing to, if I'm the first one to respond, I'll try to respond. But if I start seeing everyone just starting piling on, I just don't
makes
see the need
sense.
to add my thank you as well.
In this
Even though I do
case,
appreciate it.
we'd be looking for you to be the responder. Yeah.
But I did see today when I checked my email, when I got here to city council, Tiffany had already responded. So there's no need for me to respond further.
Yeah, I like Councilmember Swanson's response, asking if he could be a contestant.
I did too.
So,
That wasn't supposed to be public.
well, it is now. Councilmember Dalpaz.
Yeah, a little bit leaning towards Ryan in the sense that maybe it is overwhelming if we have 5 city councilors and a mayor that responds to one email. But I think the overall idea is getting to a place where we can deliver that great service to a resident. And I think that we're talking about that, we're getting there. So I'm happy with where the discussion's going.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Severing, are you still with us?
Of course I am, and I've enjoyed the conversation. And actually, Councilman Delpas, I appreciate you bringing this up because it's actually always been on my mind too. I've worried about department heads feeling like they're getting, and I really hope that department heads don't feel like they're that we're kind of in a boss situation. I see us more as team members and certainly not, a boss kind of a position. I've often wondered the same thing, Mayor. I think there may be an opportunity to potentially eliminate any confusion if we were to have each of the liaisons respond to the appropriate question. So that would be my response about, responding to emails. I think that's probably a good thing moving forward. Second thing, I kind of alluded to it. JD brought this up about department heads feeling like there's six bosses. I hope I haven't taken too much of the opposite. I know that the department heads are incredibly busy. So I've maybe really tried to avoid, unless I really needed to stop at the offices or to call, but it's kind of a hard balance. I don't want them to feel like we're watching them. I think we're a team. I trust them. I think we just need to be careful, very careful about coming across as bosses, and that we're maybe stepping across that boundary if it's occurring. So that's all I would add, and appreciate Councilman Dalpas bringing this up.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing, and I believe this is the case. No one is necessarily trying to be their boss, but what I've discovered is when a council member or the mayor says something, these department heads react. We may not think we're being their boss, but what I found, being able to interface during staff meetings and particularly, with John, I think somebody once said a double-minded man is unstable in his ways. And I have just found in my business career, if you've got 6 bosses, it's miserable. And so I think we've had some good comments tonight. What I would ask is we expand this training, and I've talked to Councilmember Swanson, and I've also talked to an outside individual. But just food for thought, here's how I kind of look at it. The council is the equivalent of a board of directors. Their job is to set strategy, priorities, and allocate resources and be a support to the department heads. In the business world, John would be our chief operating officer. And the mayor would be the equivalent of the CEO, for whatever that means. And so that structure kind of somewhat works in other arenas in the world. And so as we pursue this discussion further, maybe we kind of look at that. And as we allocate resources, as we go on to the next discussion here, I think we're gonna see that this kind of aligns with the board of directors, chief operating officer, chief executive. And believe me, it's not like I did that for 10 years, so it's not something that's, I'm trying to grab by any means. I got wore out for 10 years, so this is just a continuation. I do like the idea of setting an expectation. Our citizens should hear from us within 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so I think as we broaden the discussion, these are some things that hopefully we can address and maybe kind of outline a flow of information, how we serve our department heads and how we serve our citizens. And I'm confident that 5 council members will come up with some great ideas as we greenlight this. Councilmember Swanson, before we move on.
We have 3 of probably our most prolific citizen communicators
The
with us
biggest
tonight.
complainers in the
No,
city.
not by any stretch of the imagination. If council was okay, I'd like to hear from any of them that would like to give us their thoughts on getting a response from all 5 council members and the mayor versus just the, I mean, I know, I have a Councilman Barker, I don't think there's a right or a wrong, it's personal preference. But I mean, it's the citizens that we're talking about communicating, and we have 3 here, and if you would.
Well, we probably have more than 3. We probably have some online.
Oh, yes, I did, sorry. Do we
But
have-
I think as we initiate this discussion,
Okay.
I think as we initiated this discussion, that was a suggestion is, you know, what do our citizens have to say?
So I think if we could briefly hear from each of them.
Okay,
That would be great.
briefly, let's start with those online. And let's give them maybe 2 minutes.
Susan, 2 minutes.
Who do we have online, John?
Susan Kilborn.
That's it?
Yep.
Susan Kilborn, you were the prize winner. Give us your thoughts in 2 minutes. Thank you. Can you hear us, Susan?
Her mute button keeps going on and off, so she might be having technical difficulties.
We'll let you work out your tech.
Can you hear me? Can you hear?
We can now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad you all pointed out that I would be the one to respond out here. But I do have some input on that. And recently I was privileged to be asked to do a project that is of great importance to North Ogden. And Mr. Mayor, I won't bring it up because it's still a project in the making. But I reached out to the city council and I'm grateful for the fact that everybody but 2 responded, and I asked for negative responses. So I knew that everybody would have a chance for input, and I did not receive that. So I would ask that as a citizen and as someone who is doing something that is of importance to the city, that council members who think that their input may not be valuable, at least acknowledge that they received the information and just had no input. But I thank you very kindly. I normally receive great response from Mr. Mayor and the city council, and I really appreciate that. And that's all I have to say on this subject.
Okay, well, we'll have opportunities later. Anyone else like to comment? Brenda?
No, I have an opinion.
Yes.
If I have a specific question that can be directed to a specific person or department head, I'm fine with being directed that way or told that that person will answer my response. But if I have a general concern or a general question, I do feel like everyone I send an email to needs to respond. Because I know you read my email, you cared about what I had to say, and you took the time to respond to me. If it's simply, thank you for your email, I knew you took the time to listen to me. Otherwise, sorry, Ryan, I think he could have cared less what I said. He did not pay attention. He did not hear me. And as a resident, I want to be heard. If we had council members who were over specific, the city that my son lived in had council members over specific areas. So, you know, he emails one and gets a response from that one. But where we don't, and we have all of us, and if, like I said, if I have if it's just a general concern that I want an opinion, I would like a response from everyone. And I would like some type of a response within 24 hours of either, thank you for your email, I don't know, I will check on it. Thank you for your email, I will refer it to this person. And then I would like an answer from that point on within 48 hours. I don't want to wait 2 weeks if I've asked a question and wonder if anybody has cared. That's my opinion.
Okay.
This is different.
Any other 2-minute suggestions?
I just think you're setting yourself up for 24 hours. It could be too difficult for some of it. And, you know, I'm sick, I got the flu. I tell you, I'm not gonna answer that email today. I don't feel good. If you can shoot a goal for it, that's fine, but I would say don't beat yourself up if somebody doesn't answer in that first 24 hours for some reason. They may be on vacation, they may be in St. George.
It's
And
a
there
goal.
are certain circumstances where we as citizens need to be understanding, but I think you need to respond. Either, thank you for your email, I don't have an answer right now, let me work on it. Something that says, I read, and I agree with Brenda on that.
Yeah, I agree. There's some response that's needed. How that comes.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a positive one. I mean, a response.
Well,
of,
just
"I really don't have
acknowledgement."
an answer right now is a response.
And Brenda, I don't want to burst your bubble, but sometimes there's not an answer that we can give you in 48 hours, but we can say, hey, we're working on this. And the responsible council member make sure that we do follow up. So
Well, right, I understand.
sometimes it's a little complicated. Does anyone else want to?
I will. So I'm fine with whoever's most knowledgeable on what my question is answering me. And I feel like if I wanted a response from everybody, I'd put that in my email. I would say, I'm looking for all of you to respond to this, please, and that. And within 24 hours, just let me know you got it, and you either have an answer or you're gonna look into it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Casey, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I tackle these things different than most residents. I don't email. I'm just gonna come here, I'm gonna find it myself. So as far as the emails go, I don't have a lot of input. You know, I think that everybody feels different, but I know that feeling heard is extremely important as a resident, to feel like what we're saying matters and that it's, you know, acknowledged is really, a lot of times that's all someone really wants is just to know that they were able to express how they feel. I hope you guys will have a discussion on how to better communicate what's going on generally throughout the city with residents. You know, the easier we have to access information, the more streamlined that information is, that it's coming from a direct source that you know it's the city. I think you'll have less emails.
Thank you. And I think we're trying to do that with somewhat Facebook and our webpage. Here's what happened in the council.
Facebook it's still, there are pages that I know people think are official and, you know.
Yeah, it's,
I'm
I don't
on
know.
Facebook because I don't do it, but I have signed up at least 3 times for the city information email. I've signed up for the city alerts, for the city, you know, texting. I've not gotten anything.
John, you'll look into that and get Brenda an answer within 24 hours.
John, did you hear me?
I did. I know the answer. We haven't sent out monthly newsletters, like for the email. And then the text alerts, I don't know if we send any through Public Works, but.
Yeah.
Just one last thing though. I mean, and on Facebook, I know that you can't, people are gonna, the community pages are great and should be there. But people think other ones are official because the North Ogden City one, information isn't streaming real clearly or consistently or often, if that makes sense. So we're going to other pages to get that information.
So you like videos?
No. I got about 3 seconds.
You know, what I found is when everyone is responsible, no one is responsible.
Mhm.
So these are some good suggestions I think we can consider. Appreciate your input. Councilman Dalpaz, thanks for bringing this up.
Yeah, just one more thing I wanted to mention. I don't want anyone on the city council or you, mayor, to feel like everyone's walking on eggshells with responses to residents.
No.
I think we're doing a great job generally. It's just for discussion.
Yeah, I think we can improve. I think that's your suggestion. Is there a way to improve? If there is, we'll surely implement it. If there's not, we'll do the best we can do. So. All right, thanks, citizens. Thanks, council, for your input. I think this is a broader discussion. I would just say, consider for future discussion, what is this council's responsibility? I believe it's strategy. I believe it's resources and it's priorities. And resources obviously is budget, right? Those are a lot of the resources, but even more importantly is how can we support these department heads without being their boss? Got to figure that out. Okay, let's move on then. Councilmember Swanson, I know you have just been itching for the last week to make this presentation on budget.
I don't know that itching is the word.
And goals. I think this is our.
I'm flipping around so that we can. Nothing for. Yeah, gotcha. I need. So it's that time of year where we're working on our budget. And I met with Jamie and John, it was yesterday, right? Jamie, where'd you go? See that? There you are. For about 3 hours, a little over 3 hours, and as we talked. So, John, you have that Maslow's hierarchy available? You can pull that up. As we were talking yesterday, and as we looked at how do we programatize, if you will, our budgeting process. One of the things that has become apparent is that while everything that we do is good, some things are essential and some things are not essential. So as we just briefly, excuse me, if you all remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they build on top of each other, right? Self-actualization near the top there, transcendence, isn't going to happen if our physiological needs aren't being met, right? So we've got that base of physiological needs, safety needs, belonging, love, esteem, cognitive needs. And what I'd like to do tonight, and I promise we're going to keep this relatively short, okay? We're not going to be here for hours because this could go on. Well, yesterday it was 3 hours with just 3 of us. So what I'd like you to start thinking as we go through this as exercise, and as we get back to the next page, is what is the North Ogden City's hierarchy of needs? Thinking about that Maslow's model, right? What are the things at the base that, regardless of the circumstance in which we find ourselves, we have to have? Okay. Public safety, drinking water, sewer, right? Garbage collection. Those kinds of things that are critical for the existence of the city. And then as we go through this exercise, separating those from the things that are mostly quality of life. We want the quality of life. It's important. But again, without the physiological needs being met, having cognitive or aesthetic needs is really kind of meaningless, right? And I think one of the things that will help us as we go down the road and help future councils is if we are able to establish this hierarchy to an extent that as we go through our budgeting process each year, regardless of what the economy does, there will undoubtedly at some point in the future be a year where we have to really dig deep and we have to make some cuts. And we have to say, this can't happen. And what I'm striving to do is to take the emotion out of having to make that decision, right? That we focus on, in those circumstances, we've established a hierarchy that allows us to say, okay, here are the things that we have to have. And we budget there first. And then we move on to the other things that build us towards a transcendent city, where we have all that quality of life and all of those things. Does that make sense to everyone? Any questions at this point? Okay. Well, let's go back then. Go back to the second slide. Up right there. So we're going to go through these in relatively rapid order. And excuse me. With my brain fog, I left my notes that I took yesterday. So John, help me out with this. General fund revenues, 9,760,000 property tax. That's this year's budget, correct, John?
Yes.
2,020,000 plus delinquent of 20. We're expecting, we budgeted 4.17 million in sales tax. If you saw the December sales tax that just came out, which is off the charts crazy. We're quite a bit ahead of that, but that's where the budget is. Do you have something to say, John?
No.
Oh, I thought I heard you say something.
Actually, council member, I would just add that if we annualize where we're at through 6 months, Jamie's pretty close, that number.
Isn't that crazy? Jamie? Utilities and motor vehicle, 1.1, 130,000. Licenses and permits, 540. And again, these are revenues. Services, 479. State and federal allocations are B&C road funds, those kinds of things, 1.01. Fines, 185,000 a year that comes from fines. And, misdemeanor fines and things like that, which is, John, remind me, 15%?
Yeah, about 15%.
Yeah, we actually keep 15% of what's actually fined. The rest of it goes to the state. So it's about $1.2, $1.3 million a year in fines that are incurred in our city. Is that crazy? It's crazy. Go ahead, go to the next slide, John. Okay. Any questions? Go back, John. Any questions here?
But probably the one clarification is the utility is not what we bring in utility revenue.
Right, those are not the enterprise.
Those are the franchise fees from utility companies like Questar and those groups.
Right. More of a finder.
Although it will still some franchise fees from Comcast, CenturyLink and others. So it's one of those where in some ways it's in trouble.
So our general fund property tax, again, the budgeted number for this year that we're looking at is 2.02 million. And that comes from our previous number, budgeted number of 1.796, plus a growth of 90,000. And then a 7% for truth and taxation. Questions? Sure, we'll have questions here.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I know that property taxes are specifically allocated to public safety. That's new as of this last year.
Correct.
How close are we to breaking even? And will we break even? I mean, with the growth of homes, are we ever going to close that gap?
For instance, I think better than we used to do. About 3 years ago, we were at about 42%. our property taxes would cover about 42% of our police department. With the growth in the department, all of the changes that we've had to make to retain officers and everything, though we're at about 51% right now.
Well, I think you're pretty close, but to put this in perspective, Councilmember Dalpaz, the police department budget is up about $300,000 plus this year, I believe. And so you can see we're only planning on collecting about 200,000 plus. So we're actually diminishing that gap.
Yeah, sliding backwards again.
Hey, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Just real quick, since I work over at the other business across the way, our property taxes pretty much pay for our salaries. And I think our property taxes are comparable to North Ogden City's property taxes. But we cover 3 cities, so we collect for 3 cities to cover our salaries, and our departments are roughly the same size. So we've got to raise, if we want to make our property taxes pay the police salaries, we've got to almost double them.
Yeah, if we were to make that policy move, which we're not. We're not just gonna jump to that. It would take a virtual doubling of our property tax in order to do that, Mayor.
Just a quick comment. Could you maybe expand on the 7% potential growth, where that number came from? Because property values are probably up 25%.
Yeah, property values are up 25%. What we're looking at is, last year, we decided on the policy that we would be keeping our property tax rate equal from year to year, right? Everyone understands that, from year to year, that property tax rate typically drops as housing values go up. We made the policy that we would keep that rate flat. This 7% would be, the 132,000 would be accepting a property tax rate that is more than what the county would hand to us, but less than keeping it actually flat, right? So there would be a reduction in the property tax rate, just not as much all the way down to where the county would place it. And that would give us the 7%. The 7% we're looking at, as you look at in later slides, as we talk about inflation. Sorry, it's that doggone brain fog. You can see the word, you just can't. If you haven't had COVID and you don't know about COVID brain fog yet, ask Mayor, he's just learning about it. Keep up with inflation, right? Inflation is crazy right now. We're using the Social Security inflation metric to judge that, and it's running about 6% right now. Is that right, Mayor? We're right at about 6.5%.
Us old folks got a 5.9% increase in our Social Security.
Yeah.
And that was retro.
Yeah. So that's where that 7% truth in taxation, the way truth in taxation works, just for a very quick refresher, anytime where the residents will actually end up paying more taxes, even though the rate would be reduced, we have to have a truth in taxation, okay? Next slide, please. General fund sales tax, that budget of 4.17 million. Our previous budget of 3.4, the Social Security Consumer Price Index of 6% adds an additional 208,000 growth. 3% adds the 110,000. Of that 4.17, 3.78 or 3.8 would go to actual operations. Okay, so actually operating, funding various departments and operating the city. We have programmed to put 385,000 to our capital improvement fund. We've talked about having that policy where we're continually saving and continually adding to that so that we can take care of those projects, those capital improvement projects as they go down the road. questions on this slide? Okay, John, next. Here are some of the funded capital projects. We have our bond payment, $410,000 bond payment. Program $460,000 for road projects. $515,000 to our capital improvement. John, I keep forgetting the P.
Capital improvement projects.
Projects.
Fund.
Too many. Forget it. Brain.
And this number's wrong, sorry. It's supposed to be 385,000. It's
Yeah.
this number here. I deleted a number, sorry.
That's okay. We'll forgive you this time. And of that, so as you're looking at that, 515,000 to the capital improvement projects fund, 10%, 51,500 for maintenance purposes, 20% or 103,000 for parks projects, 70% or 360,500 for future projects. This is kind of, we're still 30,000 foot view of these things at this point. Okay, questions?
So I'm trying to understand the difference between the 515,000 to the capital improvements. 385. I thought all of it was coming from sales tax.
So the way that we've calculated it, and Jamie will correct me if I'm wrong, but what we've done is this is the amount that we've projected coming in. And instead of saying that's all available for operations, the policy that was discussed was that we limit how much is available for operations to this growth factor, the 208 plus the 110, which gives us this number, which means the leftover as part of the policy will automatically go into capital improvement projects. And so there are other sources of revenues.
Oh, the other sources.
Like utilities and that increase the number. And it is important to make clear too, that the 410,000 for the safety bond is already in the budget. It's saved, it's there. It's not coming from property tax. It's the same number that we budgeted this year that we basically we shaved out of the budget for the current year we're in. And we're continuing that forward.
That makes sense. Thank you, John.
Yeah, that's where we're going to keep this. So next slide, John. Enterprise fund highlights. So sanitary sewer increase from Central Weaver, our cost to Central Weaver is going up $140,000, which is about, what did we say, John, $1.70 and change?
Yes.
Per resident per month.
I keep looking at Jamie because she knows the number.
I thought it was $1.72 or $1.70 per home per month. And it's important to understand that that's simply a pass-through. We have no control over that. It's not that we won't pocket a penny of that. We collect it and send it right on to Central Weaver. So call your county commissioners. And
Actually, the sewer board.
The sewer board.
And let me just add there, the intent is to increase property taxes there 19.4%.
Yep.
So when you see that line on Central Weaver Sewer District, now that has to be done in a public hearing and the final budget, but that's the intent.
Is that for their capital improvement kind of things? And then this is just operations.
Yeah, the growth is so expansive that they have to bond to keep up with infrastructure.
As well as impact fees, collections and EPA requirements and.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
The $1.70 per resident,
Yes.
is that truly per resident or is that per
Not
household?
per resident, per home.
Okay, okay.
It's per residence.
Okay.
Not resident. No, we'd be collecting way too much money if it were per resident.
I'd stop having kids.
Yeah, I'd be grateful that I don't have any living at home. Capital projects are based on 90% of depreciation in the prior year, excluding our impact fee projects. Now, this next, the last bullet there, direction on fund balance goals for enterprise funds. This is where we start talking about our, no, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's getting late, my fog is getting deep. John, help me with this one.
So that is with Jamie and myself and the mayor and Phil, we'll come back in a future discussion to talk about where does each fund need to be as far as fund balance? Because we've talked about that with general fund and the goals, but we haven't talked about it with enterprise yet.
And what we're, thank you for lifting the fog, John. For an example is in our water fund, right? Culinary water. What's the fund balance, John? 4 point something? 4 point?
It is, yeah, 4.2 million.
4.2 million. So the question is, do we need to have that sitting there in fund balance in culinary water? Or is the
We have projects.
and that's the point. That's the point. Is there a better use of that money? And the question is, how much do we keep in that fund? Similar to what we did with our general fund, right? Savings. We decided we're going to draw it down to, we're going to keep 15% in there. We need to do the same thing with our enterprise funds. Each of the enterprise funds has significant amounts of money above and beyond what is probably reasonable to have there in case of emergency, like in the water fund, right? As we spoke generally yesterday, $1 million, $1.5 million in the culinary water is probably a pretty safe for a worst case scenario situation to have in that fund. If we decide that that is where we need to be, $1 million, $1.5 million, then we have somewhere around $2.7 million that can be used on projects. And we talk about then, is that another water tank somewhere? Do we do something at Rice Creek and up higher so that we can store more water where gravity fed? It can be gravity fed rather than have to be pumped, those kinds of things. So that's the next discussion coming as we talk about these enterprise funds at a later date. Be thinking about, and John, if you'll send an email out to all of council with the balances, those enterprise funds. So that you,
I was gonna say, as long as everyone knows they're estimated.
they're estimated, right? They're estimated, but it'll give a good working platform for us to start making those decisions. How much are we going to keep? Okay. And now we get to Maslow's hierarchy. So look at them, if you pull the neck, these two together. Okay. The exercise that we want to start working ourselves through, and on the right of the green hierarchy pyramid, you'll see the various places and areas that we expend funds. And we want to start working. We've talked, Mayor Berube has worked very hard, and we're grateful for the work that he's put in and helping us programatize our budgeting process, right? And we've talked about percentages and those kinds of things, right, of the budget. Applying percentages will be an easier task when we know what our hierarchy is, when we know what are the things that we have to do, the things that we want to do. And does that all make sense? Okay. So what time do we have here? I promised John we'd try to be done by 9 o'clock tonight. Mayor, are you good with that? Okay. So what I'd like you to do here just quickly is to take just a moment and look through these things, put a check mark next to those things that you think would fall into on this hierarchy, the things that have to exist for the city to exist. They're existential, I guess, would be the word. Take just very quickly, don't think about it. Just look at it and say, okay, we, for me, got to have police, right? You got to have public safety, right? Jamie and John, feel free to comment as we're going through this. Jamie, you're grinning over there. What?
I'm just back there, like you said,
What?
to comment. I want you guys very focused.
Okay, everybody quickly gone through that? So in general discussion, what are the kinds of things that are necessary for the city to exist? If we were, do we have a,
Sign them right now.
do we have our, can you have me one of those markers there?
Oh.
Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
can I ask you a question?
Yes, you may.
So are you trying to take Maslow's hierarchy of needs? And for example, because I'm kind of struggling a little bit with where you're coming from this. Are we saying, for example, that in the foundation, the darkest green, we would put the police perhaps, and then as we worked up, we would just put each of these departments in each different color of the pyramid?
That's the basic premise. You can't see what I just wrote on the whiteboard, Councilman Severing, but I wrote two things. One is exist and the other is quality of life. Both are a necessary component of a wonderful place to live, right? There are certain things that are necessary for the city to exist and to function and provide the very basics. And then there are a lot of other things that are a quality of life. What I'm trying to establish here is that we differentiate what goes where. What are the things that are required for the city to exist? And those things that the city can exist without them, but they certainly add to the quality of life that we have, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I hear a question in your yeah.
Well, what is transfers out?
John?
That's like stuff to capital projects,
Right.
things like that. So this is just a rip from the general fund document in the order that it's in the document. And so transfers out is, there's a couple in here that you won't deal with normally, non-departmental and transfers out, because those are some back end stuff. But some of those things like insurance and things are included in there. But I think you could ignore that for that discussion, those two departments. And I could probably fix that.
And again, the purpose for tonight is not to come up with the conclusive list. It's really to get the thought process going as each of us interact with our various departments, right? To be asking this question of existence versus quality of life. Because there are certain things that we have to make sure are paid for: police, water, sewer, solid waste, those kinds of things have to be in place in order for the city to just simply function at its most basic level. Those things have to be there. And so I'm trying to create a thought process where we do just that. We differentiate between the quality of life part of the city versus the existence, the piece that makes the city exist.
So then what you're proposing is then that if we put 3 departments, for example, I mean, I'm thinking about our mission to look after the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens, right?
Right.
So that means that what you're trying to do is suggest that whatever departments we put into the lowest foundation ought to get the most money.
Not necessarily. I think what we're talking about is priority. They're the first departments that we look at. It doesn't mean that those departments will get everything that they ask for every time in every budget. Right? But we do want to make sure that public safety is where it needs to be for our city to be safe, correct?
So wouldn't we take, so and I'm just exploring with you, okay, kind of
Sure.
brainstorming here. So wouldn't we take the council priorities, the top priorities, the 1 to maybe 5 or 6 that then correlate with the department would be in the lowest foundation?
It depends on what you mean by priorities.
Well, I'm just talking about the, the mayor's done a really great job of trying to get us to nail down what we feel are the priorities moving forward with the department heads. So I guess I'm just trying to make sense of the idea of the Maslow's hierarchy in the budget.
If you think back, if we think back to the list of priorities that we had, what we got from the citizens was basically everything's equally important, right? And when we looked at council, there was a fair amount of variance on what's important from council member to council member. I'm trying to look beyond that and suggest that there are some foundational things that have to be in place for the city. Right?
Okay.
I mean, having beautiful green, and this is just an example that's easy. Having beautiful green parks is wonderful, and it certainly adds tremendously to the quality of life and the city. But in a crunch, a major economic downturn, a major disaster, or something along those lines, if we had to make a choice, do we keep a police officer on or do we mow the park? To me, that's a foundational difference. And so trying to identify what are those, and I think there's only probably 5 or 6 foundational things that we always have to have top of mind. Doesn't mean that, public safety is always going to get everything that they want. Not going to happen. One of the discussions we had yesterday, and Mayor, I don't know, I can't remember our full discussion that you and I had on the phone today. But in looking at from a public safety standpoint, is it worth spending another $1 million to go from being the 5th safest city in the state to being the 1st safest city in the state? I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm saying that's a discussion that we have to have. Public safety is foundational, but that doesn't mean it is all consuming, right? Is this making any sense at all?
Absolutely.
Okay,
No,
I'm getting a nod here, a nod there, a nod there. I'm getting a wink there. Blake, is this Councilman Severing? Sorry. Is this
It's okay. We're being casual tonight, apparently, according to the mayor, so.
okay? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I'm catching what you're saying so I can feel self-actualization, Phil, over this discussion.
You're down there where it's warm and you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's making more sense. I'm just trying to take our priorities, because I would think that our priorities would probably then easily be inserted into these different foundations and the department that oversees that priority. So that's,
Correct.
It was just an inquiry.
No. I can't see your face, so I can't read your body language.
Well, you don't want to see it anyway.
Yeah, you're a handsome man. And anyway, the purpose of this is that then as we go through the budgeting process, first time this year and then moving on, because we have these this hierarchy in place, right? It makes it easier to make fact-driven financial decisions, right? Parks are important, public safety is important, water is important, garbage collection is important, roads are important. all of those things are important, but they're not all of equal importance. When it, in a hierarchical kind of way. So my suggestion is that between now and the time that we meet again, that you take these and be thinking about your liaison responsibility as you're working with your department heads and where different parts of that department fit in this hierarchical need. In a worst case scenario, does this have to exist? Answer that question, right? Ask yourself and your department head, would it have to exist at that point? And that'll help you understand if is it one that is for existence or quality of life, both of which are very important, right?
Yeah, like essential, necessary, and nice. And so, and even in an essential, it's like we want to make sure that we're prudent and not being penny wise and pound foolish. You know what I mean? It's like we want to make sure that we invest wisely. We want to make sure that we do projects that make sense to put together, even though like, you know, take away a little bit more than our essential is getting like really foundational. And then we have more to do kind of quality of life things. I mean, what I think we get a lot of from the residents is the things that make North Ogden nice are kind of based on the person. Like, you know, I like this thing, or person likes this thing. And so we try and kind of get some sort of mix of allocation of the resources so that North Ogden is nice for everybody, but not perfectly nice for one person. You know, ignoring all of the needs of everybody. Yeah.
Mayor, I saw you raise your hand.
I was just gonna say, there's probably another aspect here. For instance, statute requires us to have a recorder and a direct. So there's some that are mandatory.
Necessary.
Well, I'm not sure. I think it requires us to have a council, but I'm not sure that's necessary, but it's by law that, so there's that aspect too. I just wanted to
Those
point that out.
fall into that.
And John ought to
foundational,
identify those.
They have to exist.
Yeah, no options.
There isn't an option. We have to have water. We have to have a recorder. You know, there are certain things that have to exist in order for the city to exist. And again, I brought up the public safety piece because it's foundational, but again, it doesn't mean that it's all consuming, right? There is that diminishing point of return for any operation, right? And so we identify, so if you will, we're going to wrap it up. If you will, as you work with your department heads on the budget at this point, that you'll be having this conversation, looking at those things, and then be prepared to come back and we'll start inserting things into various blocks within our hierarchy. Mayor?
I think there's one more slide.
Is there?
That's
Oh,
important.
yes, there is. Yes, sorry. I had it sitting up here out of my view, and it's a big slide. It's an important slide. You've heard us talking a lot about outcome-based budgeting. One of the things that is necessary in outcome-based budgeting is for us to establish what are the deliverables from every department, what that is. They're not always easily quantified, right? But they can be identified. What are the expected deliverables? And so as you go through this exercise in hierarchy and as you're working with your departments, be prepared to come back with an answer to the question, what are the deliverables from the water department, right? Solid waste, parks, the recorder, whatever it is, what are the deliverables? What should we be expecting to see for the financial investment that's made? So that at the end of the year, we can look at it and say, okay, how did we do for the money we invested? How did we do on the deliverables? Does that make sense? Any questions on deliverables? Mayor? Any comments?
I would just say thanks to Jamie, John, you, Councilmember Swanson.
These two.
And I would just point out that it's not quantity, it's quality of time you spend on this. Some feel like this ought to be debated for 10 council meetings. I trust that, as we refine this, that each of you as council members will take this responsibility seriously and assist your department head in making their presentation to the council. But there's a lot of work going into this, and I would say, John, correct me if I'm wrong, that we are way ahead because of some of the principles the council adopted early on. We are way ahead of where we normally are at this point in time with a lot of work put in. Is that fair? A lot of work still to be done, but I just wanted to give kudos to those who have worked hard to get us where we're at.
And to this question here, what are the deliverables, right? What are the deliverables from what this exercise that we're going through, right? Ultimately, it is to have a system that doesn't that is dependable, right? It doesn't change from year to year to year. Department heads aren't being whipsawed back and forth from one year to the next. What are we going to do? What are we going to get? That there is a system in place that can be relied upon, that then breeds confidence, right? It breeds that confidence. One of the things, Mayor, that you've mentioned on a number of occasions, and I agree with, and I've been a part of it for the last 8 years, is that there can be that whipsaw effect, right? As council members cycle through and individual priorities change, hopefully setting in place a great financial system that removes that as much as possible. As the administration changes, the real stalwarts of the city, the department heads and all of their great teams have a system that they can depend on. And that's our deliverable to them, and is to develop that system. Okay. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor. I'm sorry I went a little over 9 o'clock.
No problem. I think that's an important discussion that needs to be had. I think it is the entrance to our budgeting process. We're a little bit down the road, but this will be helpful, I think, to the staff. Let's go on to thank you, Councilmember Swanson, for your involvement, taking your responsibilities serious also. Let's open up for public comments. Item number 9. If Brenda, you'd like to make a comment?
Yes, I would. Brenda Ashdown, I live in North Ogden. I'm sorry that Mr. Hanson left and that Jerry Shaw's not here. I want to thank the council. Apparently I missed the first meeting on the rezoning of Shaw Century Farms. I think that's what they called it. And so tonight this was new to me, but I know before they brought it in, they wanted townhomes, and I really appreciate that the council didn't rezone for that. This is my neighborhood. I think these smaller homes fit much better into the neighborhood of existing homes than what they wanted to have. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the willingness of them to work through that and make those kind of changes. Jamie is a family member. I just don't look forward to the budget meetings. They are so boring. But it makes me really appreciate what you guys do, and the time and the effort and the listening and why Jamie likes the numbers, I don't know. But thank you, I appreciate what you do.
John, do we have anyone online like to make a comment?
Yes, Susan Kilborn has raised her hand.
Ms. Kilborn, if you'd like to comment.
I think it muted and unmuted her. Yeah, there we go.
I just really hate that mute, unmute button. Okay, Carter, start the clock for me. And Mayor says 5 minutes now instead of 3. First of all, personal comments. Thank you, North Ogden City, Mr. Mayor, and council members who reached out to me. As you know, my brother passed away last Wednesday. He was a two-tour Vietnam veteran exposed to Agent Orange, and they were able to tie that to his cancer. Passed peacefully on Wednesday, but I appreciate your concern over that. Let's see, what else did I want to say? Second of all, I want to dovetail on JD's presentation on communication. And JD, you're going to hate me for this, hopefully not, but in the North Ogden City Connection magazine, I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but Cheryl is still there with her information and JD is not. And I think JD would just love to be on there so that he can share in all the great communication from our fellow North Ogden City residents. So I don't know who prepares that magazine, but may want to make that change on there.
Susan, that has been corrected in the March Connection magazine. So thanks.
Oh,
For that. It has been connected. The only problem is JD used my number on his.
You know what? Way to go, JD. Good thinking. And I really was not going to come on tonight because of everything that's going on in the family, but I love the communication and I love the presentations that you all made tonight. And Phil, just one suggestion. You're asking for the council and department heads for input on priorities. And I would ask that after maybe you all do that, you could extend that to the citizens of North Ogden. And that's all I have. I hope you guys, I'm happy you guys are healing well and getting rid of those nasty bugs. And when you're all really super well, cookies for everyone.
Okay, we'll be waiting.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
And before I forget too, I would like to thank Susan and Judge Brent West, who served on our judicial search committee, along with 3 members of the county. It's public. There has been 4 names submitted to the mayor to make a recommendation to the council. So I think I've got 30 days after the public comment period ended, which was a couple days ago. So we will be making a suggestion for a new judge here. But I want to thank Susan and Brent West, who served on that committee and submitted the 4 names for our consideration. Anyone else here like to make a comment? Okay, it looks like some people have to get home to bed here quickly. All right, we'll go on to item number 10. Council, do you have any comments that need to be brought to the meeting this evening from citizens that haven't been addressed?
Just one very quick one.
Go ahead,
And
Councilmember
that's
Swanson.
echo what you said about John and Jamie. Almost 3.5 hours yesterday, and the amount of information that they had and that they had worked through, and it's astounding. It's absolutely makes my job a whole lot easier, and it's just, I can't imagine the hours that they're spending behind the scenes to get this all worked out and to help us have a good budget process as well as a good fiscal conservative budget. They're really, really quite amazing.
There is a lot of work going on behind the scenes. And we'll be transparent to the citizens as normal, but Brenda, we don't want to bore you with all the fine details, but more than happy to share them with you. Thank you, Councilmember Swanson. Anyone else? Staff?
just two things. The discussion tonight about communication. I think we talked about wrapping it into the rules and procedures with the council. So that is tentatively scheduled for the 22nd. So those of you who still have comments to give, if you want to read through them again, I know it's this amazing document. Go through it 3 or 4 more times. Let's get it fixed, or the way that you want to operate. And then the other thing, I believe you got an email about this, but the ramp committee has approved both of the grants for funding at the levels that were requested. And it was a pretty competitive, like in the arts category, there was 75 applications.
Wow.
And so,
It's nice.
yeah, so, and all 3 categories or all the categories were very, there was a lot of good grants in all of them. And county commission still has to approve it, but we're starting that process on our end.
Yeah, I think they bring that to WACOG for approval, but I don't think there'll be a problem. I would just add to that, John, that the citizens have a responsibility to raise $75,000. That's one of the conditions on the grant in regards to sound system and lights. And I just remind, let's make sure we do an inventory of what we've got, use what we have, but that grant for the lights and sound system is contingent upon the community raising $75,000. Anything else, Mr. Call? Joyce, do you have anything? Thank you again for attending this evening. I have no comments other than to thank Officer Lopez for coming and protecting us tonight. It's always good to have our officers here. Jamie, did you have a comment you'd like to make?
I do. I just thank you, Mayor and council, for your support, but I also want to bring in all the department heads. We've gotten this far because everybody else has worked on their budgets to get us all the numbers. So shout out to them as well.
It's a team effort, isn't it?
For sure.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, with that, I would look for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.